get the say-so from all the staff. Okay, everybody quiet, please. Members of the public are advised the meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the live stream and video recording will be made publicly available on YouTube and Council's website. Welcome, everybody. Nillumbik Shire Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We would also like to pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians present. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council. We pray for guidance in our deliberations, and we ask you to grant us wisdom and sensitivity as we deal with the business of our shire to achieve the best outcome for the people of Nillumbik. As we are here for our community, we ask that all are kept safe and united to help each other, particularly the vulnerable and elderly in this time of stress and uncertainty. Amen. We have no apologies, so we'll move straight on to presentations. And we do have a presentation, or an award actually, for Nillumbik Council, and I think you'll see it there on your screen. It's the Silver Award for the 2018 and 2019 annual report. So I'm told by staff that we actually, the last time we entered, we got a bronze award for this certificate. So now we're at silver. So hopefully next year we might be aiming for gold. So congratulations to all staff and everybody who worked on that report. I do have a big thing to put on someone's wall, if everybody can see that. No, it's not up there. All right. So could I please have a mover for the confirmation of minutes of the OCM held on Tuesday, the 23rd of June, please? I'm not seeing anything. Councillor
Moved Councillor Ashton, seconded Councillor Rankin.
I think we have a couple of technical difficulties here, so thank you for that, Councillor Jamiri. Staff got that? All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you. Any disclosures of conflicts of interest, councillors? And we have no petitions. We'll move straight on to questions. So our first question is from Ben Ramcharan, who asked, there have been recent allegations that trucks of earth are dumped at Bushes Road Kangaroo Ground, very close to the Yarra River. If a permit has been granted for this, what are the details of the permit and were there any contaminants? No planning permit has been issued for the works at this site as yet. The planning permit is required and the owner made an application in late May 2020 for buildings and works to construct a shed and helicopter landing site. The owner of the land was directed to cease any importation of fill and other associated works. Until a decision on the application is made, no further works may occur in relation to this matter. Drusilla Kett asked, given that I have not heard back from officers with regard to my previous concern and given the recent dumping of fill in Noreen, I would like to ask whether the continued incidents of trucks with clean fill driving up Manish Road in Wattle Glen has the consent of Council. Council's unaware of any sites receiving clean fill near Manish Road in Wattle Glen. Manish Road is a road that can withstand a range of vehicle types without requiring Council consent. Next, we have a question or two questions from Alexander Collin. Question 1, what percentage of currently employed council staff live in Nillumbik? 33%, Alexander. And question 2, what percentage of council staff employed in June 2016 lived in Nillumbik? Approximately 32%. Carol Tibbetts asked council, will council agree to delay decisions on the Eltham and Diamond Creek Activity Centre structure plans, given that the expected benefits of these plans are predicated on state government investment commitments, at a time when both community members and the state government are distracted by and prioritising the COVID-19 pandemic? And without preempting the decisions of council tonight, and at the August OCM meeting, the Eltham and Diamond Creek structure plans are scheduled for consideration at the aforementioned meetings, and council will decide whether to delay or decide each project accordingly. Sue Dyatt asked council, it's rather a lengthy preamble. It will be on your screen in a moment. Her question is, number 1, what exclamation can council give to all Eltham ratepayers who have thereby been treated differently to Diamond Creek residents, resulting in them not being aware of changes from the draft to the final document? Officer recommendations for both the Eltham and Diamond Creek Activity Centre structure plans for these items to be brought to the June OCM for adoption. Council resolved that its June OCM resolved to delay consideration and adoption of the Diamond Creek Activity Centre plan. The Eltham Activity Centre plan has been the subject of a detailed review by some councillors, with amendments made to reflect and address the concerns raised in submissions. Question 2, what is the cost so far, including staff, council staff and consultants, of the draft housing strategy and the EMAC strategy plan? The cost of the consultant to develop the strategy was $66,000 excluding GST, and the staff cost is approximately $13,000. John Facondo asked council, what is the total cost to date of the Nillumbik Shire Council logo branding project, including design and replacement, etc.? The total spend on council's rebranding project came to $34,257, a figure which included the design and replacement of some existing signage. Any replacement or installation of council signage or logo beyond this time will be included as part of ongoing operational costs and determined on an as-needs basis. Aidan Puglielli asked question 1, my question relates specifically to point 8 of the Engaged Connected Communities section in the council plan quarterly performance report. In the interest of informing the Nillumbik community, what are the key differences between a statement of commitment as an action towards reconciliation and a reconciliation action plan? A statement of commitment provides the guiding principles for working together, reflecting council's intent to work collaboratively with Indigenous Australians as a dedicated first step, which clearly marks council's commitment to working alongside the traditional custodial owners of the land to advance the aspirations of our local Aboriginal communities. Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation has expressed their wish for council to affirm its reconciliation commitment to working with traditional owners and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people through a statement of commitment. The RAP, or Reconciliation Plan program, provides a framework for organisations to support the national reconciliation movement. The RAP is a strategic document that supports an organisation's business plan. It includes practical actions that will drive an organisation's contribution to reconciliation, both internally and in the communities in which it operates. Question 2. Furthermore, the text layout of the quarterly performance report is broadly spread, often using very small font. Does the council think it possible to visually restructure future documents of this nature to improve legibility, particularly for the aged and visually impaired members of our community? The current report produced meets accessibility requirements, but it can be enlarged when viewed online via council's website. However, council is always looking at opportunities to improve and will review and amend the layout of the report for future council plan quarterly updates commencing next quarter. So thank you for that input. We now move on to our advisory committees. Could I please have a mover for 00720 Advisory Committee Report? Councillor Rankin. Councillor Brooker. Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Sorry, you're muted.
Okay. Advisory committee reports I'd like to move as per the recommendation. I would just like to make some comments as regards living and learning and the others if I have time. If the time clock I can't see anywhere, is that possible to have that up somewhere? Yeah?
It's coming.
Okay, good. I'll start. We've got a new chair of Living and Learning Nillumbik. Ruth Bailey, who has chaired the committee for a number of years, has stepped down, and Robin Meetle is a new chairperson. Robin's times coincided with the movement to Zoom meetings, and that has been driving a very difficult period where the committee has had to meet like we are this evening. Just want to acknowledge Ruth's commitment to living and learning for many years. Councillors will recall she's addressed the council on behalf of Living and Learning previously. Living and Learning has run into a perfect storm of challenges for being a registered training organisation. Part of that program with the state government providing part of the program through TAFE colleges in areas that were strengths of Living and Learning, that is early childhood education and certificates in individual care and certificates in individual support. Those courses are now available at TAFE colleges for free. So competing against a free offering meant there was some, what was valued at Living and Learning, the individual attention, personalised service, assistance with job placement is paramount. So those areas that made Living and Learning distinctive allowed in the short term for that offering not to impact enrolments too greatly. But clearly you would need to monitor that position moving forward. Then early in 2020, these points of difference of individual attention and so on are compromised because the training is having to be moved online. So, in the beginning of the first term, really essentially, Living and Learning were able to pivot, transfer their learning to online. But you can imagine the long-term consequences of their intrinsic advantages have been somewhat diminished because of that. So as well as that, enrolments in the short courses that they have, and they're things like first aid, we were just in the realm of doing some pre-accreditation training courses, and the normal makerspace programs, the crafts programs that the courses that Living and Learning run. Most of that time has spent refunding and crediting various participants in those courses that have had to be refunded. So look, the neighbourhood house branch of Living and Learning has been impacted in those areas I've just spoken about. Some courses were due to recommence following social distancing kind of provisions at the beginning of June, but that did not last long. There was a lot of work done about how many people could fit into a space. I think they worked to a maximum of 14 where they could have run the classes, but that is all now, is now moot, and we just have to wait until the end of these restrictions. So the tentative steps towards reopening have been reversed. So all in all, it's a very bleak picture. I have to paint for Living and Learning. Revenues are down as no courses has commenced. Expenses are also down because there hasn't in all ways been tutors that have necessarily needed to be paid, but the infrastructure that surrounds Living and Learning still exists, and they've had to spend their time trying to pivot to online learning, which is going to be for the foreseeable future what they have to do to provide an online training module of the early certificate in education and individual care. So just to acknowledge the efforts of the committee and staff, but I don't want to sugarcoat it. Just to say the cold hard truth is it's about as challenging a time in this space as I think you can possibly get. Thank you. I also wanted to I could speak about positive ageing, a committee I do chair, actually. We had a brainstorming session, again via Zoom on Friday, where we were applying for grants that the state government had announced to address areas of social isolation. So as in all things, when you apply for grants, you can only put in your best possible application and hope for the best. But these are 1.3 million across the state, so not a big amount of money, but grants from $5,000, I think, to $200,000 are available. So if we can all keep, hope for a positive outcome there, because it is, social isolation is really the issue that is uppermost in the Positive Ageing Advisory Committee's mind and looking at the ageing population. I think I'm over time, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Councillor Rankin. Now, any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. We have no reports of special committees, so we'll move on to our first officers report, which is 111, the Eltham Major Activity Centre Structure Plan. Do I have a mover for the motion?
Yes, Mayor.
Councillor Clark.
I have a motion which is different to that which is on the papers. Maybe they could be put up, and maybe I should take. I'm assuming we have a few people who are listening in.
We do, Councillor Clark, approximately 40.
So let me just quickly run through this. Firstly, so that is the motion I'm proposing. One, that council adopts the major activity centre plan, which is provided subject to the following changes. A couple of these are just minor typographical things, and there's a couple more significantly. So first one is a typographical error in the 9th objective on page 22 by modifying the objective to state to encourage the redevelopment of land to the west of Main Road for a public transport hub and complementary office, retail and housing uses. The only change here is there's a typo error. The word is typed in the draft report is east and it should have been west. So that's the only really change that is there. B is more clearly require a flow, pattern and style of development in precinct 5, pages 65 to 69 and any other ancillary changes to the community precinct, which is supportive of the iconic design, heritage significance and vegetated setting of the Eltham Library by requiring 1, an appropriate transition in building height and form from the north end of the precinct to the Eltham Library, and 2, any future development at the adjacent property at 895 Main Road to provide a boundary treatment and interface with the Eltham Library, which is sympathetic and responsive to that site. I'll explain that later. C, to remove section DD in figure 20 out of the Heritage Overlay 230 so that it is applied, so it should be so it is not applied to Italian cypress trees on 895 Main Road, and make consequent change required to the related cross-section provided as figure 21. In short, if you look at figure 20 and section DD, that section DD moves to be a bit, the note needs to be moved a bit to the left to make sense of it. Again, just as a drafting error. D is to propose modified development settings in the vicinity of the Eltham Scout Hall and Eltham Girl Guides Hall in precinct 5 on page 65 to 69, and any other ancillary changes to clearly set out the expectation of these facilities will be retained, and to provide a pattern of development adjacent to these facilities which is sympathetic to their continued use. This will include amending the document to propose that the 4 to 5 story height limits be suitably set back from these facilities and appropriately reconfigured to provide a sympathetic interface. And E, which is probably the most dramatic, to amend wording not to propose any increase in heights, so any increase in height limits to that section of precinct 3, pages 56 to 51, and any other ancillary pages which is located north of Youth Road. And that indeed is on, I'll pick up the figure that is to make it easier for the community to follow that. That is on figure 16 of the document, which will be changed. And I'll explain that one a bit later on. And 2, requests that the officers bring forward to a future ordinary council meeting presenting a planning scheme amendment which proposes to reference the adopted structure plan into the Nillumbik planning scheme to make changes proposed to the structure plan to planning provisions. I'm assuming there won't be sufficient time to do that in the life of this council. That will be the next council, and advisors all submitted in writing of council's decision.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Can I have a seconder, please, the motion? Councillor Rankin, back to you, Councillor Clark.
So, councillors, let me just take you through a little of where we've been on this journey and then to some of the changes that I'm proposing to the draft tonight and why they are, and there's two significant ones within that. In short, this process started nearly 18 months ago. I won't detail all of the timeframes and the meetings that I've had. Suffice to say that there has been a very long, some might say protracted, others would say valuable contribution of community interests along the way, including a community consultation panel where community members submitted to be part of that panel. We then had a major structure plan presented to us in February of this year, where it proposed the key elements of this draft, which was retained basically all the current heights, but recommended some very minor increases, which I'm proposing to reduce even further tonight. And also proposed to include, back in February, Andrews Park and the large aged care facility as specific precincts because they had relationships and to be able to pick up a number of matters, but it was proposed that we put them in at the same time. And that a lot of this work is actually about, this project tonight is about the Bridge Street business area. And indeed all of the changes that are proposed in this business area. And the other part is to really provide an emphasis on safe pedestrian and cycling environment and to advocate and improve the quality of access to the Eltham Town Centre by way of cyclists and public transport. Although we don't propose any substantial changes to any of the zoning provisions in relation to land use. In essence, this is a document which is an update of the 2004 structure plan and tries to deal with a raft of issues that, you know, things change obviously in 16 years, but particularly to try and improve the design and development overlays going forward in the planning scheme to create, to learn from some of the VCAT decisions which have been determined as a result of the 2004 scheme. It has significant advantages in providing setback provisions to residential precincts to increase the landscape opportunities. And some of these have even been supported by ECAG and a number of those groups. I'm going to run out of time to really run through a very detailed analysis of what this project does. But suffice to say, some of the reasons for the changes that I've proposed tonight as a result of rereading all of the 36 submissions that we had most recently, and also some submissions we had some time back to see that it was all compliant with what this document proposed. And so what I'm suggesting tonight is a couple of significant changes from the draft. The first one being really about a better interface between the library and what's colloquially known as the old Shire office site. And that's in light of any pending applications that the state government might make for any uses of that particular site, and to ensure that there is a very appropriate interface which retains as much as possible the landscaped interface that currently exists between those two particular sites. So I've gone into some detail explaining what we would want to achieve here with additional setbacks, etc., so that we don't have any hard edge interface there. And secondly, on review of particularly some correspondence from Girl Guides and others, I don't think that the document as it currently set out provides for the satisfactory retention of those assets, albeit they are on state government VicTrack land, and to provide an appropriate interface between potential redevelopment on the state government land and those significant public buildings, both the Scouts Hall and the Guides Hall. So again, I've gone into some detail how we would do that interface far better. Finally, I'm proposing a change, which is probably the shortest note, but the longest and the greatest import, which is in precinct 3 to reduce the heights back to what they currently are in the scheme. So where it was proposed to be 5 levels, to reduce that back to 4, and where it was proposed to be 4 levels, to reduce that back to 3. The reason for that is in essence because I believe that on the other side of Main Road there, towards between Cecil and Lux Street, we again are at 3 levels. And so to provide a graduation as a gateway into the town centre from that northern entry point, we need a far more gradual change in the setback height. It's been pointed out by some of the other submitters, and I concur with those views. And so I've proposed an amendment to bring them back to what they are now, to provide a better interface. And even if there's another resolution I have on tonight about if the potential of the state government wanting to build a multi-deck car park there, that will provide for that to occur, still within those parameters, but nonetheless, I'll speak to that matter later on tonight. I'm really running out of time, but suffice to say, councillors, we've spent an awful lot of time with this, listened to the community well, and my belief tonight is, having considered all of that, we've listened to their views, and indeed, we've now come to a point where we can progress to the next stage, which will be to look at any planning scheme amendments as a consequence of this. This doesn't change the planning scheme in its own right. It simply sets the framework in which further work will occur.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Sorry to cut you off. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to go over any points that Councillor Clark has brought up this evening, but what I will highlight is I know that over the last few days, particularly, most of us have received an enormous amount of emails from the community. And I thought it was important to be able to highlight back to Council and to the community this evening the fact that a lot of them believed that they have had no consultation. This process went back even before we, apart from Councillor Perkins, commenced our term. It started back early in June 2016. From June 2016 to February 2017, there was a targeted consultation with particular community groups in that time, particularly groups like the U3A, Eltham Monty RSL, Health Ability, St Vincent's, the Eltham Police, Eltham Tennis Club, Department of Transport, guides, scouts, restaurants, community and business groups within the areas. Throughout that particular time, they highlighted a number of different areas that needed to be, or that they wanted addressed, which Council has taken those into consideration. In April, from April 2018 to February 2019, there was the Community Urban Design Advisory Panel that was put together. The forum comprised of 3 representatives of the Eltham community, 3 representatives of the Diamond Creek community, 2 councillors and a representative from the Urban Design Consulting company, the then David Locke and Associates. The community membership of the group was selected through a public request by Council for nominations. The group met for 6 sessions, and again, there are a number of findings that the consultant then took away and put into the plan. From July through to October in 2018, there was public consultation, and the consultation activities were publicly highlighted by public notices in the Leader, through the Nillumbik website, surveys, directly notifying other community groups and other stakeholders, meetings with other particular focus groups, the Eltham Chamber of Commerce and other representatives of Council Positive Ageing advisory groups, schools and other surveys, and particularly a council officer standing down at the railway station during peak hour taking surveys. So how anyone in the community can stand here and say they have not been consulted and that we're doing this without talking to the community is absolutely appalling.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. I'll hand the floor over to other councillors who would wish to speak. Councillor Demerit.
I agree with Councillor Clark and Councillor Rankin. This has been a long process and quite drawn out, and there are a number of really good initiatives within the policy, particularly the setbacks. Where we seem to have dropped the ball is in right outside the try line, or right at the goalpost, is we've got to the stage where we actually have the document and we give people 3 days in which to read it, understand it, and to understand the real intricacies of what we're saying. And this is evidenced by even Councillor Clark, who has spent numerous hours on going over this document and on preparing it, and still has to, when we're about to endorse it, make changes to the document, which clearly shows it hasn't been read through, and the fine detail of it doesn't add up. So a few of the issues are the implications of changing Bridge Road area over to activity zone. One of the regrets of the previous council was that they changed the Eltham Activity Centre over to activity zone, which has led to all sorts of anomalies which we couldn't get out of because it was activity zone. Well, the Bridge Street business area is a unique little space which services the industrial needs of the Eltham area. If we turn it over to activity zone, we'll end up with more shops, more offices, and less of the industrial type things such as the wood yards, Ormonds, the pump shops, those type of things. And we're already seeing complaints from the residents, for the owners there, of high number activities. So things that require 50 or 100 car parks moving into the area and taking over the whole area, which underpins one of the major problems with this structure plan. It has no plan for the infrastructure to house its densification. It says, according to Geographica, we have significant opportunity to have a greater density within the ACZ, but no way how are we going to implement it. The other thing is we look at the Kevin Andrews money for a car park along the east side of Main Road, the west of Youth Road. And you just will say it's already one of the hardest intersections with the people heading towards Catholic Ladies College, the train station and parking. And we're going to cure congestion by adding a 200 or 300 car park to it. So I can't see it.
Councillor Jameri.
Foreshadow a motion that, should this fail, I would suggest that it is taken to next month's OCM after being reviewed properly.
So to clarify, you're against this motion? Yes, no? Sorry.
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you.
And foreshadowing that should it fail, I suggest
you.
that it goes to next month's.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Egan. It's an interesting debate. I know that Councillor Clark was stating that he was going to run out of time, and he did run out of time, and perhaps more time can be provided to Councillor Clark and the rest of the council to properly consider the changes that Councillor Clark has put up tonight. I'm not saying they're bad changes. I think they're probably appropriate changes and good changes, and those changes are worth being communicated to the ratepayers of Nillumbik before council adopts the document. Indeed, 2 or 3 business days for people to have seen this document. Although Councillor Rankin is quite appalled by the notion that people don't feel they've had enough time to see this final document and to provide some input to their elected representatives, my gut feeling is that wouldn't be the general view of community. 2 business days, if they were able to see it Friday, they'd be lucky, but perhaps Monday or Tuesday. That's probably not the community consultation that I mentioned the many people that have written to us in the last couple of days were expecting. And I wouldn't have thought they'd get this suggestion from Councillor Rankin that that's an appalling approach, or it's something to be appalled at. You know, I see them as submissions. I think they should be considered. Every one of those emails to councillors, and I think it was all councillors, indeed, Councillor Rankin and Councillor Clark and Councillor Egan have stated they've replied to most of those complaints and concerns and were generally happy. I'd like to sort of see that loop for myself and like to get confirmation from some of those people that have written, because there have been very, very many people that have rang and also sent in emails, sent me texts, you know, messages on Facebook, you know, you name it. I've been bombarded in the last few days from concerned ratepayers of not only of Councillor Clark's ward, but Councillor Jumerich's ward. And so I have to take my lead from Councillor Jumerich. And you know, this isn't the Councillor Clark show. Councillor Jumerich is the other Eltham councillor in the room, is the other elephant in the room. And if Councillor Jumerich is not comfortable, you know, it says to me I'm not terribly comfortable either. And I think the process that Council agreed to with Diamond Creek last month, or you know, at the Future Nillumbik Committee meeting was an appropriate process, and I think it's appropriate that we align the two processes. So, you know, I can't support this motion. Unfortunately, Councillor Clark and Councillor Rankin, I think there's been some positive changes, but I think we've got to involve community more. We've got to be, you know, consultation is more than just a word, and it's certainly nothing to be appalled at. So, no, I don't support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
Last time I heard, Swipers Gully was part of Eltham as well.
Councillor Rankin.
No, your research, mate.
Excuse me, councillors. It's over to Councillor Brooker.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think what we've just witnessed really demonstrates probably better than anything why this plan is ought not be adopted this evening. The community had 7 weeks to make submissions. On the draft, the final plan, as Councillor Perkins said, they've had 4 days. And tonight, councillors have had about 30 minutes to get across the change that Councillor Clark has made, particularly that Group E, where he is now lowering some height limits in a certain part of the plan. No one has seen that. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but certainly I think it goes to the fact that if you can make changes like that at this juncture, you probably haven't done enough pre this juncture to get it completely right. Now, Councillor Clark and Councillor Rankin talk about the extensive consultation, and they are misguided. What they have been doing is information gathering. That is what they have been doing, gathering information from the community, getting ideas, getting technical advice, information gathering to go into the plan. That part is good, but you have to have something to consult about. That's the point. Once you've got the draft, you've got something to consult about. All the other stuff is ingredients into the cake mix. Once you've got the cake, that's what you talk about. That's what we need to be doing. Now, to say that this process, it just staggers me. I think what we need to do is really use those persuasive skills of Councillor Clark and make some workshops available to the community, have some Q&A sessions at Eltham Library with, you know, the other elephant in the room as described, Councillor Jumerich, to maybe argue a contrary view, to really have an imaginative, rigorous, robust consultation with the community. Because up until now, it's been vested interest groups and information gathering. All useful, but that is not the community consultation that is required. So that is what I would submit needs to happen. I would also say, I do want to be clear about one thing, about my perspective, and it's important, I think. I'm interested, you know, the Eltham Structure Plan is really important. I mean, many, if not all, would value the green wedge part of our shire, the people that have made submissions. And they would probably consider residential development in that area as something of an anathema. Well, that position is not at all consistent with, objecting to greater densities in activity centres. And that's what a lot of the objections have been about greater densities in activity centres that have been designated suitable for the purpose. I also am out of time, but the crucial thing is there's some good things about the design guidelines that have been talked about, but we need to get better at the final part of this process.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton, do you wish to say anything before I go to right of reply? No, over to you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I say at the outset, this has not been about information gathering. If you're talking to the Chamber of Commerce, you're talking to every community group that exists. That is consultation, Councillor Booker. Can I also just highlight, we are never going to achieve a document which has consensus. That is not going to happen. If you had a vote out there in Voterland, they would vote 2 to 3 levels, no more than that. That's what they would vote for. That is the reality. It's not the reality of what the State Activity Centre and the planning scheme requires of us. People have not got a background on what we started with. This is not the first time a document's gone out there. We did it in February with the first draft. We've done it again a fortnight ago where we listened then to the 36 submissions and read those. And now is the conclusion of that. It is what we are elected to do, make decisions. It's not a matter of you leave it out there long enough, and if you think you've worn them out and there's no one else going to complain, then you vote on it. That's not good decision making, nor is it appropriate democracy. There are some that generated some of these emails out of a group that purports to call themselves a community action group, who simply spread misinformation and confused the community in large part. I've responded to all those 40 emails in the last 3 days to get comments back, having got and having conversations. Thank you. I much appreciate your prompt, detailed responses. All the best in doing the best for this beautiful part of Melbourne. I'm heartened to read the many references in maintaining trees and greenery, also the requirements of sympathetic buildings. My concerns about setbacks are now satisfactorily answered. So if you do listen to all of the emails we've got in the last 3 days and you take the time and you do the job, then indeed you'll get a good outcome. And that's where we've got to tonight. I reread all of submissions. I didn't want to miss anything. And so that's why I made those 2 or 3 changes this evening to make sure we absolutely got it as good as we can. I've got no doubt it'll be good for the community going forward. I look forward to Diamond Creek next month.
Thank you. We still have to vote, so I will put it to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors.
Division.
Division called. All those in favour? Councillor Egan, Councillor Clark, Councillor Ashton, Councillor Rankin. All those against? Councillor Perkins, Councillor Jemerick, Councillor Booker. Thank you, councillors. We next move on to Officers Report 112. C126, which is the Bridge and John Street rezoning, and C129, 323 to 325 Yan Yean Road, EAO removal. Can I have a move for the motion, please?
Moved, Councillor.
And a seconder? Councillor Brooker, Councillor Clark.
Mayor, I just want to pick up that this is indeed is the next step, or one of the next steps in a resolution I moved back in February, which was to close the road reservations or use of them for roadworks in Bridge Street and end of John Street, both of which are anomalies within that circumstance, and then change what is indeed a residential zone into a neighbourhood residential zone into a public public land zone. And so this is the process of bringing that about. It also deals with the issue in Yan Yean Road and the EAO removal. Sorry.
EAO.
Yeah, we got that removal. Just to say, the other part of what I did in February was also to talk about, as I said, the road reservation. That's a separate process. It is underway already. I think we'll have the formal process of that. We've already got the council resolution to do that, which I did in February. So that's moving through its formal processes, and there'll be public notices, etc., going out about that going forward. So Again, in terms of what we did in February, we've now put some posts in the ground. Understand in the next week or two, we will, from the Director of Infrastructure, we will actually undertake the landscape works in that park, having submitted to the residents the landscape proposals that we're looking at to undertake there. And so both of these areas will be utilised for what is there and currently purpose and intended purpose, which is for park use, little pocket parks for the purposes of the benefit of abutting neighbours. So I'm pleased to see this is yet another rezone of land to public park use. This council will have achieved, as I've said on a number of occasions, more areas going into public parks than any other council in its history. If you look at this, if you look at all of the other reserves which are available for sale, which we opted not to do, which we've also proceeded with a planning scheme amendment to put those back into public parks, with all of the land which we've acquired and purchased for the Diamond Creek to Hurstbridge Trail, we have added an enormous contribution to the Nillumbik community in all of the public lands, and this is some additional work in that space to add to that potpourri of what is good for the environment when you are part of the Green Wedge. So I commend the resolution, and hopefully this proceeds on with the support of our local community.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Over to you, Councillor Booker.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak about the 323 to 325 Yanyin Road aspect of this planning amendment. That property is in my ward. For those who know Yanyin Road, it is near the Scout Hall, travelling north. What we have here is a Section 173 agreement that supports the removal of the environmental audit overlay, provided, importantly, that all the conditions of the environmental audit are demonstrably adhered to. So the Section 173 agreement really is de facto taking the place of the environmental audit overlay. That enables us to remove the overlay, and that was to provide some more certainty for any prospective purchases of those properties. But I just want to, it's probably good, well, it may be good. In January 2018, I'll just quote that Connolly Environmental prepared a soil assessment and remediation report in response to the subdivision permit requirements. Connolly Environmental identifies mullock heaps contaminated with arsenic referred to it in the statement of audit have been removed, and that conditions 3 and 4 to the statement have been complied with. So all systems go as regards the removal of the audit overlay. Everything that needs to be done has been done, and people can proceed with greater certainty, which is good.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Any other councillors wish to speak to this? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll next move on to OCM 11320, Queensland Fruit Fly in Nillumbik. I'll have a mover for the motion, please. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Mayor. So recommendation, oh, you've got it there? Yeah. I won't read it all because it's a very long recommendation. But if you note that our advisory committee has put in a lot of work, and that we are going to work with Shire of Yarra Ranges, and we are also lobbying Agriculture Victoria to help us support on this. So it's quite a long recommendation, and I'd just like to say that our Environment and Sustainability Committee have spent many hours working on this.
Councillor Ashton, before you go on and speak to the motion, could I have a seconder?
Sorry.
Please. Councillor Clark, back to you, Councillor Ashton.
Sorry about that. Yes, so Queensland fruit fly is a potential major hazard to agriculture and also to vineyards and backyard growers, and as well as our orchards in Nillumbik, and it is a threat that we've already seen over here. It's winter now, but in the spring we will be ramping up our efforts. Our environmental team have been really good. They've produced videos We are working with local Mitre 10 and Bunnings stores, and we need to try and contact as many local growers as possible. Also, any trees of a prunus varieties that includes cherry plums or I think hawthorn, anything that, particularly blackberry, can also act as a host for the fruit fly. So it's an extra impetus for us as a council to eradicate as much blackberry as we can, and as much roadside prunus and hawthorn. And with the hawthorn, I'm quite attached to that from a heritage point of view, and there are ways that we can actually prune that prior to it fruiting. So we will be looking at that. So yeah, it's a really good recommendation. I very much thank the ESAP committee and our environmental officers for working so well on this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Clark.
I have nothing at this point, Mayor.
Any other councillors wish to contribute to the conversation? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Our next item is 114, the draft temporary and community event signage policy. Can I have a mover for the item, please? Councillor Clark.
Moved, Mayor, as per the papers.
And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Rankin. Councillor Clark.
Just to say, Mayor, that we have already had some meetings with various community groups just to review the previous policy to make sure that it is going to fit their needs. We met today with the woodworkers group. We've met with Eltham Rotary. We're meeting with some others. I think we've got some of the arts groups later on this week. These are becoming very fruitful meetings. I think we'll probably end up with a policy that deals with some of these major events and another one which deals with the more smaller events, but this is becoming good work, and I'm quite hopeful that we will certainly get there, ready for an adoption of a useful policy resolved by September.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Rankin. Councillor, any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brooker.
Yeah, just to say there may be some confusion out in the community about the banner program. I was in Eltham yesterday. Councillor Clark was questioning my motives actually earlier for being in Eltham, and I can assure people that I was there for a legitimate reason. But I noticed the banners are now in action. People can see these the much talked about and much anticipated banners in the main street of Eltham. I would say I wouldn't rush out to Eltham to see them. In particular, they're somewhat underwhelming. It's a kind of a lot to do that we've heard about for these banners and so on, but it may cause some confusion to the community why they're flying, and we haven't actually formally adopted a policy. We're very happy to consult extensively on the draft advertising community signage policy and defer it because it's appropriate to do so, to include all the actors. But there's other policies I would say may be more significant. We seem less likely or happy to defer. So I'm happy to support the deferment till September or until such time as there is full community consultation done on this particular issue. Thank you.
Councillor Perkins, you had your hand up.
Oh, probably just quickly on the banners. It was good to confirm from officers today that the banners in Eltham can be, utilised to advertise council events right across the Shire or council-sponsored events right across the Shire. So they won't necessarily just be advertising events in Eltham. They might indeed advertise events in other communities and communities closer to me. Rotary Town Fair being one in point, given that council doesn't own or control any banners in Diamond Creek, Rotary might seek to use the Eltham ones to supplement their advertising for the Diamond Creek Town Fair. Question of the officers, Mayor, because I think the officers have been maligned, particularly and intentionally,
by Councillor Perkins, who's just trying to play some silly tricks and trying to be.
Are you talking
Well,
to?
what's the question? It's, you know, don't Councillor Clark. There's no need for such nastiness.
Could we just have the question, Councillor Clark, of staff? Is it Rosa you wish to speak to?
Yes, what the office has said, if I am right, Rosa, is that the banners will be used in accordance with the policy when it is determined, and if the policy determined that it could be used for activity.
Is that a question?
It is a question. If you want to listen instead of interrupting.
It's taking a while. Okay, go on.
Can you get Rosa on board, please?
Um,
Just wait a moment, everybody, and we'll get the.
I haven't finished the
I
question.
just have a question to governance. Are we going to have councillors correct everything other councillors say?
Only if they're inaccurate.
we
I
have
don't know you want to go down
one
that path, Peter.
issue at a time? We're waiting for Rosa to come online, and she will answer Councillor Clark's.
It would be a long night.
And resolve it. Rosa, could you
I
please?
don't want to make silly points and we get on with it. It won't be a long night. But my question to Rosa is she about?
She's just coming. One moment. If everybody could be quiet when she gets here, and then we won't have to repeat the question. Okay, fire away, Councillor Clark.
So Rosa, it was my question is just to confirm what was said in private earlier on this evening, that the use of the banner poles in Eltham for events such as the Diamond Creek Town Fair would only be the case if that's what it became within the policy which we're currently writing. There is no presumption at the moment, but it'll be a matter of whatever that policy says, what they'll be used for.
So the policy talks to certain guidelines that would control the content of the banners themselves. The banners are there to promote various activities and events that the public can attend or engage in, or that are being held in the municipality at large. And they're there to, I suppose, as another medium of providing some information.
But my question was, and until the policy is resolved, and if the policy said it's only available for events conducted in Eltham, then that's what would occur. If it specifically said it's only in Eltham, i.e. if it's in Diamond Creek, you can't put them up in Eltham, then that's what we would do. There's no presumption at the moment they would be used for other purposes.
At the moment, the policy is in draft form, and until it's, resolved or adopted, and it clearly states, that they can only talk to events in Eltham, then that's what the policy will say. At the moment, the current draft does say that it's there to promote events and activities that the public can attend or engage in that are being held within the municipality.
Thank you.
So the Wattle Festival would be another good example.
If that's what the policy resolves.
Well, that's what the draft policy says. So I was just
Councillor
query.
Clark, Rosa
The
has
query was
asked
around
a
the
question.
draft policy.
Refrain from interrupting, please, councillors. I
Can I
will
please
not
ask Rosa a
take
question while she's here?
the button. Thank you, Councillor Demerick. Far away.
Of the ratepayers, which of the ratepayers paid for these posts to go up?
The banners were funded. The existing current banners that are flying up there, which are just the Nillumbik Shire banners, were funded out of our operational budget.
So, but the posts were funded by all of the Shire?
They were a capital works project, and so we're funded out of
For
that
all the
particular
people
budget.
of the Shire, okay.
Right, thank you. Now, can we get back to the motion on the table? Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. We next move on to OCM 115, the State and Federal Government Eltham Park and Ride Upgrade Project. Can I have a mover for the motion, please?
Yeah, I have a motion which is different to that on the papers. Unfortunately, it's fairly long, but I think given we're online, I probably need to read it through. Can it go up?
Yes, it's coming now. Just wait one moment. There you go.
This is an important project within the Shire and a significant project. So to give it its due attention. So what I'm proposing is that the council, one, notes the state and federal government commitments to additional commuter car parking at Eltham Railway Station. 2, authorises the Mayor to formally write to the Minister for Cities, Urban Infrastructure and Population and the Minister for Major Transport Infrastructure with copies to the Member for Menzies and Member for Eltham stating that A, opposes development of a single-use car park building. As such, a development will likely be highly intrusive upon the visual character of the area, will provide inadequate inbuilt natural surveillance of the surrounding public realm required for safety and security within the area. 3, will fail to capitalise on significant opportunities to provide highly beneficial and integrated urban renewal outcomes for central Eltham. 4,
Be potentially redundant.
Well, this is what you've got on the screen.
Or
It's different. What you've got on the screen is different to what I sent you, Rosa. I'm sorry, you've jumped down one. I'm sorry, you've done it down. Yes, I'm sorry. Be potentially redundant in the future and incapable of alternative sequential uses demanded of sustainable development. 5, ignores the opportunity for a partnership approach by the private and public sectors to realise optimum and multiple outcomes. B, requests an integrated proposal which, by satisfying the following requirements as a minimum, contributes to the multiple functions and preferred character of the Eltham Town Centre. 1, Roman numeral 1 is located on the site being including the existing rail stabling adjacent to Youth Road with the rail stabling relocated. 2 is a mixed-use development with all public, e.g. Station Street and Town Centre frontages presenting active uses and building in natural surveillance for safety and security. 3, provides uses including but not limited to secure undercover commuter bicycle parking and change facilities, community services functions which relate to the surrounding open space and community uses, residential home office and or small scale office community uses, and further that the proposal integrates these uses with the overall development and not adjunct to it. 4, incorporates a design that will prevent future redundancy and a waste of development by allowing for sequential uses, not limited to car parking, enabling habitable occupation in the future. For example, by providing adequate floor-to-ceiling heights and other necessary measures for future habitable uses. 5, limits existing tree loss as far as practicable and maximises opportunities for Indigenous tree canopy planting, especially in the street and in the front side and rear setbacks. 6, provides easy, direct and accessible pedestrian connection to the railway station and to the broader town centre. Provides clear demarcation between the private and public realm with no ambiguous space between or behind buildings or between buildings and the railway. Further establishes the essential public realm as the street, parkland and specific designated routes to the station and town centre which are clear, safe and secure. 8, supports a future shared trail along Youth Road. 9, consolidates and minimises car park entries to limit traffic impact on the public realm. 10, employs building heights which satisfy the preferred height limits set out in Schedule 1 to the Activity Centre Zone, Activity Centre Eltham. 11, presents a sympathetic interface, height, mass scale and materiality to adjoining community and recreational facilities such as the aged care facility, tennis courts and club, the Girl Guides Halls and Scouts Hall, and other important elements of the public realm such as Parkland Street Station and Town Centre. Further, as part of satisfying this requirement, the proposal should present no expensive wall mass or homogeneous elevations to the public realm. 12, provides an active building tenancy address on street frontages through multiple reoccurring front entries and windows. 13, provides variety in the type and tones of external building materials and varies the proportions of the elevation and public frontages. 14, ensures that buildings make appropriate use of established Eltham materials and tones, such as the use of natural stone, timber, bespoke, locally procured artistic pattern panels, and natural coloured and textured renders. And C, requests that a partnership approach amongst the private and public sectors be, rather than used, can you change that to considered, to achieve the actions listed under 2B above?
So staff will change that last line. Before you go on, Councillor Clark, can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Ashton. Back to you, Councillor Clark.
Councillors, I apologise for the length of this. Having said that, what we know at the moment is that state and federal governments have promised between them 300 new commuter car parks at the Eltham station to be delivered prior to the next series of state and federal elections. We know that the Department of Transport State has been auspiced to be able to undertake that project to determine where it goes, and we've had a briefing looking at the various the various locations in and around the town centre where they've looked to build this car park. And the Youth Road car park is the preferred site. What the government is currently putting before us is the nature of an outcome which is basically a concrete box over a multi-series of levels, probably 3 or 4 levels, which has no public interface, effectively could in fact become quite dangerous, most likely just to be sort of 2.2 metre floor levels, which means if it becomes redundant into the future as a car park, it's got no other alternate uses. And it does not integrate and would lose most of the canopy trees that are along that precinct at the moment. The only way to do this project properly is to actually relocate the train stabling, push the project back into the total space and sleeve or wrap the building in active uses. And that's what this resolution does, and goes into some detail with the support of some officer advice in urban design about how that might occur. Because we need to be absolutely clear on this, particularly coming up to the fact that by the time we're into end of September, we're in a caretaker period and the government may well be proceeding on this. We're probably only going to get one shot to really be very, very clear about what we have as an expectation. And so that's why the resolution is so detailed, because it also sits within the context of the Eltham Activity Centre document, which we resolved earlier on this evening. It is good for the community that we will have additional car parking in the immediate vicinity. It may take some pressure off Bible Street and other streets which people park, or around the football ground and other locations where they currently park and oversupply those areas where they should be parking here. We do know that Eltham does end up also providing car parking for people further north in the municipality where they drive to Eltham to catch a train, which is of a more regular nature. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean that Eltham should get dumped with another bad designed outcome. Whoever thought it was a good idea to put train stabling in the middle of Eltham just there got it wrong at day one, and we shouldn't make it worse. We should use this as an opportunity to fix this problem. VicTrack has a particular entity which is good at, should be good at, that's what they're getting paid for, to deal with private sector developments of this nature. If they're not up to it and can't provide the detail, then there is Development Victoria who could step in and work up a proposal to achieve this outcome. And so, you know, it is up to the ministers and the local members to assist in delivering this outcome. This is the opportunity for the local members to step up as well and demand of their agencies good outcomes for their local communities. And I implore those local members to engage to get an outcome which is going to work for the local community. No one is going to be thanked, and I wouldn't have thought the people, particularly from Councillor Jermerick's ward, who, you know, I think unfairly has been cast as the elephant in the room. I wouldn't do so. The view that you're going to get from Eltham North, looking back to the train station, to see a concrete box forever and a day as an outcome for a resolution of this, flies in the face of everything we've spent all of the effort for earlier on tonight and the last 18 months trying to get the Eltham Activity Centre design guidelines correct. If ever is a project which is going to set the scene to get this right, as the first step towards a redevelopment of the Eltham station, this is it. And so I said, I do apologise for being this so long, but it is detailed and it's intentionally done that way to give them some very clear guidance of what needs to be done here. To walk away from what is a very prescriptive, very helpful resolution is to fly in the face of what is best for this local community. So the task is before us all to try and get the best outcome for our community. I implore the councillors to support this as we're going to embark on this journey towards trying to get some good development in this precinct.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I'm very concerned that, you know, poor old Eltham, you know, it's no longer that village that we knew and loved 40 years ago. And, you know, often we don't have a choice, but here we do have an opportunity. When you look around the world and you look at railway stations and you look at car parks, you know, innovative, forward thinking, they're there for a long while once they're built. So I think it's an opportunity to try and get this right. It's an opportunity to, you know, soften something that, you know, is going to be useful. We do have a lot of people driving into Eltham to catch the train there. They will do that. The trains from there are more frequent, and at the moment, people are having to go on to Watsonia or Greensborough. So we definitely need more parking in Eltham. What that car park looks like will be a major consideration as to whether we get things right or not moving into the future. You know, having looked at what's happened in the UK, there are car parks over there that are just graffitied, just dangerous. People don't even go into them now. So let's try and get this right in Eltham. Let's try and have a space that is a car park, but that has some other uses and is has setbacks, has trees, has canopy, and is somewhere that people feel safe and able to go to and park, you know, not only park but feel that they're safe and that it's part of and well connected to the station and the shops on the other side of the road. So I think we've got to try and really get this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting this motion. I think we've got to do something better than what we could end up with. It scares me immensely that we're going to have all these additional car parks. Already we've got congestion within the main road, Wattle Tree Road, coming through Research and coming from South Eltham back into Eltham, particularly in peak hour. It concerns me because we're going to get more traffic coming from the north. So we're going to build this massive high, or the state government is going to build this high rise of car parks. And you don't want to be coming into Eltham looking at a concrete block. I think what Councillor Clark has done is a very smart option to be able to put some framework around it. Both state and federal have committed money to this project, but we don't want a concrete block, and we certainly don't want to be looking at it as we're coming in by train, looking at this hideous car park coming in. It's a nice area as we come through on the train. We can see the trees. We certainly don't want to see a concrete block. I think there's huge opportunity there for perhaps some additional shops, some great opportunity there for the local Indigenous community to be able to get involved and particularly have some input into some of the external walls and fascias as well. And I just think if we do it right, we could do a really, really good job here. So I'll certainly be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Demery.
I commend Councillor Clark for trying to polish this, but you know what they say. The fundamentals are wrong. So when Kevin Andrews was putting the money aside, it was for congestion busting. If we take I hope Councillor Clark's vision can come true, but I highly suspect for $5 million, we're going to get a concrete box. The issue is the concrete box is on the wrong side of the tracks. It needs to be on the other side of the tracks, and it probably, Councillor Clark's words, needed to pick up something about tidying up the bus interchange as part of it as well. But we move it to the other side of the tracks, there's a fair chance it'll be stripped back to a concrete box, and it is in the most congested part of Eltham there is. you have to cross the train line. You have a pedestrian crossing which has Eltham East Primary School to its east and the Catholic Lady College to the west. There is children going all through there from 8 o'clock onwards. And then you've got the commuters trying to get into there. It's a one-way in, one-way out, and back to a Lollipop Lady, the Judge Book, retirement village. It's poorly lined, poorly designed, one-lane road into a half-made road. It is just totally in the wrong place. It needs to be on the other side, needs to be integrated, needs to be run back up behind the shops and somehow fix up all of those things. But it has been poorly thought out. It was just a last-minute election promise. There's no real data behind it. There's no real plan. And we're going to put another 400 to 1,000 car movements into one of the most congested, highest pedestrian areas of Eltham with one way in, one way out. It just makes no sense.
Thank you, Councillor Jemerick. Councillor Brooker, Councillor.
Just clarify, do I take it Councillor Jemerick was speaking against?
I'm sorry that I was so vague in what I was saying. Yes, I'm against it. I'd like it moved to the other side, but I appreciate your work in trying to polish it.
Councillor Perkins.
Mayor, can I just ask, just so that I'm clear what Councillor Jemerick's saying, when he says the other side, I'm just not quite sure where he means.
The other
So
side
if
of
we
the railway
consider
line.
Youth Road is the western side of the railway,
Yes.
we'll move it to the eastern side of the railway.
Where the bus interchange is now.
Bus interchange, I'd maybe compulsorily acquire the liquor land and
Right, you've answered the question. It's over to Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, thank you. Look, this whole project, it only really this notion only really came to council, last week of this, high rise of car parks that Councillor Rankin talks about, and I share his concerns. When we're thinking we want to increase the usage and patronage of the public transport system, and we want to try to get cars off the road, but we do that by building bigger and bigger car parks, which means you don't get any cars off the road. You just have as many cars on the road as you would if a train system didn't exist. So it's sort of like that fundamental thing about, the $5 million from the federal government for congestion busting. Is a car park the best way to do that? We're actually encouraging more traffic into the heart of Eltham, or are there other solutions? Like Councillor Clark, I didn't interrupt you, so I won't tolerate you interrupting me. If you just be quiet.
Can both of you stop talking?
I will try to, but Councillor Clark's talking over me.
Question of Rosa.
Thank you. So my question.
Can I wait till my speech is concluded? I've still got much more to say.
I'm not trying to embarrass you, Councillor Perkins. I'm just trying to get it clear from Yelmar that it's $6 million for a car park, which has got nothing to do with congestion busting, which is another $5 million.
All right, we'll get Yelmar on the line.
We didn't end up debating the wrong thing, so I'm trying not to embarrass you.
Same. Thanks, Councillor Clark. Thanks for your valuable input. Whether it's congestion busting project or not, I don't think it does help in terms of, as I was saying, building, reportedly 300 new car parks on that location in Youth Road. We've got all the congestion. We've got more and more cars travelling through Eltham through a very narrow main road. I know that, Councillor Clark and the Libs have long wanted a duplication of main road to make it wider and have effectively a ring road going through the heart of Eltham. But
I've never said that.
Councillor Clark, let him finish, and then we'll get Yelmar on the call. Thank you.
But what we need to look at fundamentally is this the best spend of the money? Is this the best way to spend community money in a car park, a high-rise car park in the centre of Eltham? Really, if you take a step back and sort of think about what we're trying to achieve, we're trying to change a mode shift. We should be spending a lot more time and effort in encouraging walking, encouraging feeder buses. You know, there is currently a bus interchange there. You know, that's the ultimate thing from you know, people in Nillumbik and in other wards to be able to, you know, get on a bus and not use their car at all. You know, for a family to have you know, 3 or 4 or 5 cars in that family, that's, you know, strategically, that should be what we're trying to sort out. And I just sort of think, you know, having bigger and bigger car parks, encouraging people to get in their car and drive to the train station, you know, so you don't have congestion in the CBD, where you're having it in the centre of Eltham instead. So, you know, fundamentally, that's my sort of concern with the whole plan. I'd like to council to take a few steps back and think about and perhaps advocate for better ways to use this money. Is it appropriate that all that money that we've got from Kevin Andrews, and I recollect Councillor Clark was on the front page of the local paper, you know, with the announcement about it. Did it really need to be used for car parks in the centre of Eltham? So we can make out that this is a looming state government disaster, but the reality is the money came from Peter's mate Kevin, and really allocated for this purpose and for nothing else. So I think we need to take a bit of a step back.
Wrong again.
Excuse me.
Not that wrong.
To, Mr. Phillips, could you please clarify the 2 sources of fundings and what the criteria was and what it was for, please?
Mayor, can I just, the question is, what is the source of the funding for the 300 car parks to go on a site in Eltham? That's the question.
Through the mayor. Can you hear me okay?
We can't hear you, Mr. Phillips.
We'll just have to accept my version of events then.
No.
Councillor Perkins, can you both of you be quiet and let Mr. Phillips talk? Thank you. We can't hear you, Mr. Phillips. One moment, he's going to call in. If I had a naughty corner, you two would be in it.
Mayor, I'm not going to put up with that because I'm sick of getting maligned by Councillor Perkins, who is wrong. He doesn't read the document. He's got no idea.
Let Mr. Phillips answer the question and then we can move on. But
Not
I would
me when I'm
please,
taking
can everybody stop the constant interruptions on other people? If you want to ask a question, wait till the end of it.
That's not the rule.
Mr. Phillips.
Okay.
Thank you
Right.
for your patience.
We can hear you now.
Through the mayor, there are 2 separate funding streams for the 300 car parks in Eltham. There's a federal $6 million funding stream for 200 car parks, and there's a separate state funding under the Car Parks for Communities Fund, which is, I understand, 150 million for car parks across Melbourne. They're the 2 funding sources for the car parks in Eltham. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Does that clarify it to both councils and the rest of the councillors?
Sounds like I was right.
No, you're both wrong. Councillor Brooker.
No.
The
There are-
300 was the federal
If we
and
could-
another 150 for the state. End of story. That's what Mr.
Is Yelmar still there? Or maybe Councillor Clark. Just because yours was so long,
Are you
number
asking
C,
something
I'm
through-
asking either, Councillor Clark may know the answer to this. Is that the original recommendation on the papers seeks a Disability Discrimination Act compliant pedestrian bridge to the Eltham Railway Station and Main Road Retail Precinct? I didn't see that in your motion. Could that be added on, or is it there? It was so long I may have missed it.
In response, Mayor, if I may.
It is there, Councillor Brooker.
So, yeah, the rest of yours was, is any of the original motion deleted?
Yes,
Which parts?
all of it.
Not
apart from C.
Yeah, C is still there.
Well, so that's what I'm trying to find out, if C is still there.
C is on the bottom of page 2, V1.
Okay, so the mayor knows then. The C is the only item remaining from the officer recommendation.
I'm sorry, I'm the mover.
Yeah,
Now,
you
that's
asked me a
what I'm
question.
asking.
I was trying to give you an answer.
Yes?
Councillor Clark.
So this is a new resolution. Nothing on the papers is part of this resolution.
Okay, okay.
So,
Does,
to answer to your question,
yes,
It's indifferent.
there are words in here which, let me just find them for you.
Page 2, I think you're looking for, Councillor Clark, the bottom item, bottom point. Provides easy, direct and accessible pedestrian connection to the railway station and to the border town centre. It doesn't say via what though.
Correct.
it doesn't say it's a Disability Discrimination Act compliant, and I think it needs to be in there. So
I'm
if,
happy to have the words in there, which is DDA compliant. But
yeah,
I'm not looking to have the words that say we've got to build bridges or whatever else we've got to do.
okay.
You happy with
Well,
that, Councillor Brooker?
Yes, yeah, because your motion talks to the getting across.
Yes.
Yes,
I just wasn't prescriptive of how you do it, but I'm happy for it to say specifically DDA compliant. That is.
So you could have that before the words accessible.
Yeah.
yeah, because that's been a long-standing issue at that train station, as you know.
Yes.
Okay.
Just-
Point of order.
Councillor Jamiri?
Just while
sorry,
we've got
Councillor
Mr. Phillip on the line, just wondering if he could let us know how much traffic modelling has been done on this proposal.
If you're referring to through the mayor, if you're referring to the car park discussion, that this is officers' initial consideration of potential locations within Eltham. Officers haven't undertaken any transport modelling.
Thank you.
Right, have any councillors not
I
spoken?
was just with a point of order. Like it might have been covered off, but the seconder, I didn't catch who the seconder was for Councillor Clark's motion.
Jane, Councillor Ashton.
And to amend the motion, you at least need the approval of the seconder. We can't assume that Jane's always going to do what Peter says.
Councillor Ashton, would you like to formally comment on the addition to Councillor Clark's amended motion? The word video.
I've already spoken to it.
No, but can you just give us your either approval or disapproval to the words adding in disability or DDA compliant accessibility?
Yes, I agree with that. I thought that was in the original document. Thank you.
Thank you. Has any councillor not spoken? Councillor Brooker.
yes, no, I haven't spoken, Mayor.
Over to you.
Okay, look, I'll be supporting the motion. I do think it is highly ambitious. I do think, as Councillor Perkins says, it's not necessarily the best solution, but I think I like to live in the world of, I guess, what can be achieved. And I think, if the governments have allocated millions of dollars for a car park in Eltham, that's what they want to spend the money on. I don't think we'll be able to persuade them to sort of take a broader but better view that they ought to look at congestion more broadly. So if that is the case, and that is the case, certainly I'll be supporting the motion as we have it. But let's be under no misapprehension. This is, in American football parlance, kind of a Hail Mary. We will see where it all plays out. But what it does do, even if it's successful, is it delays the construction of a car park in Eltham by 12 months. And I think councillors need to probably be aware of that fact and be aware that commuters will be looking for a car parking relief, will not be getting it as a result of this motion. If by some I would say near miracle that it happens to play out the way Councillor Clark is suggesting. So look, I'll be supporting it with those kind of caveats and commentary, but you know, it gets my vote. I guess that's the important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Booker. Right of reply, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just point out, most of the conjecture and frustration in the middle of that is frankly because councillors don't read the papers. Yoma didn't even need to come on the line. 3 through to 6 on the officer papers says exactly what Yoma said. If you read the papers and did the work, you'd know what's going on in the municipality, Councillor Perkins. And that's the problem. You see, Councillor Jumrick has no ideas to how to deal with the problem. Councillor Perkins got no ideas to deal with the problem. They want to pass it off as some sort of political commentary. The reality is the state and the federal governments are going to spend massive amounts of money on a car park in the middle of Eltham. So Councillor Jumrick, if you want to put it somewhere else, do the work, move the resolution. Don't sit there and just criticise others who try and do the work. Because some of us are actually trying to get good outcomes from our community, not just make political commentary. It is very frustrating when such an important project like this cannot get unanimous support about the right way to undertake it. There is nothing that should be in any way, shape or form other than support for a good design outcome. Now, if you want to put it somewhere else, Councillor Jumrick, then do so by moving it. Don't just vote against what somebody else puts the hard work in to do. I'm not excited about what the government's talking about at the moment, and I'm not going to be supporting something which is a dud outcome, no matter what flavour of the political party funds it. We've got to get it right. And so the only way this will be a bad outcome is if Kevin Andrews and Vicky Ward don't do their job with their respective ministers. That's why it will be a dud and a disaster. This council, I in particular, will seek to hold them to account for a good outcome. It's over to you, members of parliament. We've told you what needs to happen. If you want to do something else, then go on with it. But we're getting it right.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. We still have to vote, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? And that is carried.
Division.
All those in favour? Councillor Egan, Councillor Brooker, Councillor Clark, Councillor Ashton, Councillor Rankin. All those against? Councillor Perkins, Councillor Jumrick. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to the June, or OCM 116, June Interim Financial Report. Can I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Rankin.
Happy to move it as per the papers, Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Clark, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this is the draft interim financial report coming in for the fourth quarter. I think there's a couple of points here to note. If we go to point 4, the council has ended the financial year in a better than expected position, generating a strong net profit. You'll see that there is some negative figures in there. The Australian accounting standards have shifted, particularly over the last few months. The CFO has amended and put in place the appropriate measures. So the grant funding, I'm just bringing up my other notes, the grant funding now comes through and that'll be pushed through to the next financial year. So there's $15 million worth of grant funding that's been shifted through. So that actually shows now that we have a net positive for the year of $4.1 million. So then we go through the surplus. It shows there that there's actually a deficit there of 1.4 million. When we actually break that down, there's 873,000 that's been a negative impact due to the coronavirus. that's come through from the leisure facilities. There's been an increase in the leave provisions as well that is now across the organisation, with more of the staff working from home. The further 200,000 has been additional PPE and other tech support as a result of, other tech components as a result of COVID. But all in all, it's a good outcome. We've done a little bit better than is expected, but I suppose the point here to note is that it is a draft, that it does go through to the Audit and Risk Committee for vetting, and then it'll come back to the August OCM as a final. So, I've spoken to the team. The mechanisms are in place to assist the organisation in managing and going forward in the liability, particularly of the leave provisions for staff across the organisation. The pandemic is probably the only thing that's really affected us, and that's shown up in the last 3 months. But when you take it all into consideration, we're in a very good financial position. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rankin. Over to you, Councillor Clark. No, any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Our next item is the 117, the Procurement Policy Annual Review. Can I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Rankin.
Happy to move it as per the papers, Mayor. Yes,
No.
happy to move as per the papers. However, I think there might be an adjustment there.
You mean an amendment?
That's correct, an amendment, yes. Sorry.
So, Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mayor, I'm happy to second it, but with the addition of item 3. So as per the papers, it's on the screen now, not as per the papers, if you like.
Is that okay with you, Councillor Rankin?
Yes, it is, Mayor.
All right. Back to you, Councillor Rankin.
Sorry, just going through to my procurement notes now. Again, this is the annual review. The corporate, we're focusing here on the corporate social responsibilities. We're looking particularly on the local businesses and local jobs. 90% of our spend is coming through, particularly from Victoria, and we can dig down even deeper, and 28% of it roughly is within local businesses as well. So it's a good outcome for local business, whilst I believe we could probably do a little bit more there. I think we're certainly tracking in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. The additions that I have to this resolution speak to circumstances around design of council buildings.
Yep.
Procurement policy is often about getting best value whilst recognising we want quality services. But in essence, and we have confronted this on a few occasions, and one more recently when we were talking about a building in Diamond Creek, but we want to achieve not only projects which deliver good outcomes for our local community by way of jobs and employment and buying of materials, but equally by way of good and excellence in design standards. So what I'm proposing is an addition to the policy, so that when we are procuring design services, it's not based broadly on financial circumstances. I'd give the example of the Eltham Library, which is a much loved building in this shire. If we simply went for a procurement on the basis of tendering fees for an architect to design us a building, we may not have got Greg Burgess to come up with the building that we had, because I'd absolutely guarantee he wouldn't have been the cheapest, or probably in the bottom couple. What we did do in that particular stage is we went, I remember Rodney Rushcollar was at the time, I was sitting in another chair at the Institute of Architects at the time, and they shortlisted quality architects who had work in similar sorts of spaces which would fit well within the environment of Nillumbik. And so one of the reasons you get good design outcomes is if you get really good architects. And so sometimes you might have to pay a bit more for that. And so what I'm trying to argue here in this addition to the procurement policy is that, and it's not only just in built form, it's often in landscape as well, that we need to be able to come up with a proposal which ranks very highly design excellence, recognises people that have been award winners in the sort of work that we've done in the past, again, which we might need to pay a bit more for that level of excellence. It might well then shortlist those, in which case we would then get to some fees. So I'm just trying to put a bit more rigour about trying to ensure that we get better quality outcomes. I've had some conversation with officers who deal in this space today, and we came up with the words that I'm putting on the screen. They are a bit cumbersome, I agree with that. And I think Councillor Booker made the point to me earlier on, but to be honest, with all the other things I've been dealing with today and tonight, I haven't had time to rewrite it to be probably a bit better grammar. But it does get to the point of what we want to be able to get to. So I apologise for not being great grammar, but it has the spirit of where we want to get to, and I'm sure officers will tidy it up when they put it into the procurement policy. But I do commend what we're trying to achieve here as the best way forward in the broader community.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brooke, Councillor Perkins.
Look, yeah, I certainly support the motion. I think Councillor Clark has done some good work here. Councillor Clark, as you sometimes do, I acknowledge that. Noting that we all work very hard in our own ways, and in this instance, trying to refine the procurement policy to get better design outcomes, I do strongly support that. In the past, before this council, before the previous two councils of which I was on, even way before then, we can compare the Eltham Library to the Diamond Creek Community Centre. Both built about the same time. Eltham Library, beautiful, iconic building that respected neighbourhood character, that did everything what the local community wanted. The Diamond Creek Community Centre, at the time and to this day, still looks more like something in Chernobyl that should be housing the core of a nuclear reactor. It's a best of block building that couldn't really be any uglier. It was cheap, and the council of the day didn't want to allocate the appropriate money to Diamond Creek to have an outcome that the people of Diamond Creek and Nillumbik could be proud of. That's a shame, and we certainly don't want to see that sort of thing happen again. So to me, that's a stark comparison of the type of building design and outcome that we've seen in the past. The Diamond Creek Community Centre, best of block construction, couldn't be any cheaper compared to the Eltham Library or even the Eltham Community Reception Centre. Two buildings built at the same time, but with very, very different design outcomes. So look, I think it's good to see that council moving in this direction. I think it's a motion certainly well worth supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Brooker, you had your hand up before.
No, I would support the motion for the same reasons. I think you've got to pick and choose. I wouldn't say there's every building that you need to go down this line of excellence on. I think you can get reasonable design outcomes at times, but certainly when you're looking at those really high use type buildings, and the Eltham Library is one, and Eltham Community Reception Centre, then I think it's worth considering investing in those extra design standards. So I think it's actually quite a important little provision to put in there to enable you to be able to say, in this instance, in these circumstances, which are not a utilitarian building like a car park in Eltham by the train station, or maybe it should be. Maybe that's exactly the sort of place where you should use it. But that's what you could do. So yeah, I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Brooker. Any other councillors wish to speak? No, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you very much, councillors. Our next item is 118, tender report, upcoming contracts via agencies agreements. Can I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Rankin.
Happy to move it, Mayor, as per the papers.
And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Booker. Back to you, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think it's appropriate just to quickly talk through it. I'm not going to take up the whole 3 minutes. The contract tenders here, we work very closely with the MAB and PA, or Procurement Australia. They do all the hard work in sourcing and collecting the best pricing for these sorts of services. And this is more a procedural motion that will support this, and that these services will be adopted and supplied through MAPV and your PA as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Brooker, do you wish to speak? Any other councillors wish to speak on this? Not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you. Councillors, our next item is 119 Local Parks Program Pocket Parks Grant. Do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Demerick.
You keep moving my button around on me by putting this up. Council endorses the following location in order of priority to be submitted for local parks program, new pocket parks. Andrews Park, 60 Diamond Street, Eltham, and provides the Chief Executive Officer with delegations to approve contracts associated with a successful application under the local parks program, new pocket parks, up to the total project costs identified in the submission.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Brooker. Back to you, Councillor Demerick.
The state government has identified $35 million for a new pocket parks program. It is part of a program to establish 6,500 hectares of land in urban areas, and there are we have an opportunity to apply for two such projects. Excuse me, two such projects in our local government area and within the electorate of Eltham. So one of the officers looked at a number of areas. There's fairly tight controls on this program, and so they came up with the Andrews Park area, and with a view to increasing connectivity on the bike trails, increasing connectivity to Judge Book for the older adults, some adult style fitness equipment, a bike rack, a unisex toilet, and some seating in and around the park, and further planting. The project, the area there is a very tight, very congested area. It sort of is a confluence of, as we've spoken about earlier, people coming from the train heading to school, people heading to school in the opposite direction, a lot of bike users from local and visiting, and it is a very confusing space. It's also sort of, the bike track peters out into nothing, and so do the parks. You quite often see people sort of trying to drive cars down into the train station. So by defining the area better, by adding toilets and some public amenities, I think we can come up with a very good outcome for a very busy part of Eltham. And it also needs to tie the recreation area back in with the retail area across the road. So we'll see some upgrades to signage and making sure that people, the users, are able to take advantage of the shopping and retail opportunities provided across the road. So I commend the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demerick. Councillor Brooker.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, yes, I think this is one issue we'll have unanimous support on this evening. It was, I think, encouraging that rather than the playground kind of route, that we've gone down this active recreation route. 3x3 basketball court. I know we'll all recall trying to get something like that up just 2 months ago, I think, in the $68 million funding that was provided by the state government as a kind of infrastructure boost as a result of the pandemic. And for whatever reasons, I think it didn't get sort of the 1, 2, or 3 recommendations. So it's delightful to see that a 3x3 basketball court is included in this area. And hopefully, you know, like all these things, you put in the best application you can, and you try and meet the criteria as best you can, and you really hope you can be successful. But it would certainly, if we were, you know, that fortunate, it would be a great addition to that area we've already spoken about tonight, as being a particularly busy sort of area for different sorts of reasons. But it would certainly be some placemaking. I would say we're slightly curious that the parks had to be in Eltham. I mean, there's 40% of my electorate is, my ward, I'm sorry, is in the Yanyeen electorate. So Diamond Creek, of course, as well. But we'll absolutely go with it where we can get it. And in this case, it's Eltham, and that is what we will do. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, look, happy to support the officer recommendation here. Numerous sites have been considered, including Allendale Road, Diamond Creek, for a BMX facility. But at least it's on the radar, I suppose. I've had numerous discussions with officers about that and the need for a BMX facility that part of the world, given the amount of kids using BMX jumps that they've built themselves around that part of the world. It's incredible to see what's happened there over many years. The Eltham electorate, of course, does run into Diamond Creek. It doesn't run into my ward, but it runs right up to Challenger Street. So yeah, there's significant parts of Diamond Creek that is covered off from the Eltham electorate. So I don't feel like I've been left out in the cold at all, even though it's not specifically my ward. As everyone knows, in Diamond Creek, all of Diamond Creek is very close to my heart, whether it's in my ward or not. But the notion of 2 half-court basketball courts is a preliminary design that I saw today. I think that's well worth having. The fact that Andrews Park is very close to the heart of the activity centre in Eltham. That's what I think really nails it in terms of the other possibilities, and I can sort of see that we've got to put our best foot forward. We've got to put our best application up. I know I've heard that certainly Banyule are putting an application up, so Banyule are also eligible for the same funding stream, because they've got part of the Eltham electorate as well, and I understand they're putting up a proposal for a pocket park in Weir Street, Montmorency, very close to the Montmorency train station, and so that's what Andrew Park is to me. It covers off on one of the last dot points. The project site is easily accessible via road, public transport, or well-linked bike or walking tracks, and the project site is already supported or in proximity to services and amenities. So I think it's the one that ticks the most boxes, and I think it's the one that's probably most likely to get the grant funding and to compete potentially up against very good projects that we put up by Banyule as well. So that's the context of which I'm supporting Andrew Park. It's the best spot for essentially what is, if we get it, it's free money from the state government. It's up to $1.3 million without any contribution from council, which is very rare. So it would be a ripper to get. Any or all that $1.3 million would be great.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Clark.
My question in the first instance is of officers. My question is, in the report and in the attachment, it talks about a preference Pocket Park with co-investment from council and other contributors is preferred but not mandatory. My question is, what are we anticipating as a council to contribute to this? And is it beyond the 1.3 million? So is it anticipating 1.3 million from the state government plus an additional contribution? Or can someone explain to me exactly how they think the funding regime? That's the first question. The second question is, has there been any public consultation on this project with the community in Darwood?
Mr. Phillips. Philip. You there?
Is Mr. Gillette there?
No, he isn't, but Mr. Phillip is.
If, through the Mayor, if Yalmer is struggling to get on, the 1.3 million for this project isn't anticipated that we will contribute anything else. And if there was any consultation, it would have been just with local groups as to which one might work best. This came out only a few weeks ago, so there hasn't been time to do major work. And we brought back to council what we thought was the best site that would be the most likely to be supported by government, but we don't have to add to the 1.3 if we get it. Thank you.
That was in the agenda paper, Peter. I can read it out for you. Dot point 9 on page 316, budget implications. No capital contribution from council is proposed. So you might have missed that bit when you read through all your documents.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
Thanks, Councillor Perkins. But no, I didn't miss the document. I've read it all, as I always do, unlike some others. But my question was, because the actual council the attachment refers to the Pocket Parks Round 2, and it talks about the nature of it's preferred that it would. So I just wondered whether there had been any late advice about there might be requiring some additional funding. But look, just to speak to the resolution, Mayor, if I might, I'm concerned about Andrews Park being basically, which has been used for a fairly long period of time as occasional space, often used by cricket and footy clubs and other usuals for sort of casual sport. There's not going to be much of this park left by the time this one goes in. We've got the tennis court. Out of what is left of Andrews Park, half of it's taken up by the tennis club. And now at least another half or more is going to be taken up, or what is left of that half is now going to be taken up by the basketball courts and all of the other hard infrastructure that's going to go in here. Now, local community might find that that's a good idea, but I've got no idea. So for those that want to talk about community consultation, talking to the groups, putting a notice up, having a conversation with anybody about what it is, and I'm not critical of officers, it's clearly the role of ward councillors to do this task, to ensure that the community is on side. But I've got no sense that there has been any consultation with the community. And indeed, the consultation that I have heard of comes from the Eltham Wildcats, who indeed were arguing for these sort of basketball courts to be located nearby the basketball use at Eltham High School. And there is letters of support, which I saw today from the Basketball Association, I'm sure other councillors got them, asking for these basketball courts, but not in this location. So whilst the $1.3 million for Andrews Park is a good idea, I'm by no means certain that the recommendation here is supported by the community, or indeed the design outcome is the appropriate one. There's no evidence to suggest that. So I've got no concern with us seeking to garner $1.3 million for the park and approve contracts. But I would like to have an addition in here, item 3, that community consultation commence on the design of the appropriate layout and design of the balance of this park and how the $1.3 million is best spent. So I'd be proposing that as an amendment. if you remember, we did Eltham North Playground, and I do remember there was a lady who, you know, I've had a number of conversations with, Natalie Duffy, who I understand has sent me emails about running for council. She was very strong on community consultation on that part. Now, her community consultation probably wasn't my style, and we didn't agree on where the park should be relocated to and the way the car parking should work. But nonetheless, there was a very detailed piece of community engagement about how that park was going to be designed, what was going to happen. And it was similar sort of dollars being spent. And we went through a huge public consultation process to get a great outcome. But in this one, on a whim and a fancy, at a minute to midnight, we've decided we don't need to consult with anybody. Officer sent us a drawing, and that's good enough for me, says Councillor Jimerick. Let's get on with it. He's listed what he's going to build, but no community consultation. The hypocrisy is just amazing. So my suggestion is that we do have, and I'd hope Councillor Jimerick, who is moving this, might include that we actually start to commence some community consultation on this in the motion. Otherwise, I'll move it as an amendment. So I'll ask Councillor Jimerick first if he wants to include it. If not, I'll move it as an amendment.
Councillor Jimerick.
I'm very glad that Peter recognises the role of the Board Councillor in consultation, and very pleased he recognises how outstanding the consultation was on the North Eltham Playground. More than happy to include it into this. There is a lot of support for this project, and more than happy to include a line that says something along the lines of officers begin community consultation as soon as funding has been sought.
Councillor Clark, you're muted. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Could I suggest you might add the words for a proposed design?
Consultation on a proposed design.
Thank you.
Can I say maybe should the application be successful?
I think he said that.
I don't think we want to start consultation until we get the money.
Just wait one moment and staff will get that up on the screen so that we all know what we're voting on.
Perhaps further consultation, because we need to highlight the significant and ongoing consultation that the Ward Councillor has had with his constituents.
I'd be very interested to know how many we've spoken to. But I didn't.
Would you like to come down and meet some, Peter?
Councillors, can we just not have the rambling commentary? Can you wait till we get the words up on the screen and we'll go from there? Thank you.
I think it'd be best to stay to your side of the tracks, Peter.
Councillor Perkins, would you please refrain from making comments? Does that meet Councillor Jimerick and Councillor Clark's requirements? Councillor Jimerick?
Sorry, I'm just reading it.
I'd say continue community consultation.
Okay. Continue community consultation on the proposed design should application be successful. Yes. So begin to continue, please.
But officers haven't actually commenced, though, is it? It's more Councillor Dimerick that's had the consultation, so it's got to be officers.
According to Councillor Clark, the Ward Councillor has responsibility for all community consultation. So
that's not what I said.
That is very similar to what you said, Peter. You have been recorded.
Yeah, but
can you both be quiet now? Just have a look at this, please.
Sorry, can we change begin to continue, please?
Point 3, he wants to change begin to continue. And a full stop on the end, please. Thank you.
It'd be like putting a cherry on the top of the cake in terms of consultation.
Is that meet your requirements?
Mayor, my question is of the officers. Has any consultation that they have commenced, and if so, with whom? And my question also of Councillor Jurmarisk is if you have commenced consultation, with whom?
While we're getting Mr.
Point of order, Mayor. That question has been asked and answered. The CEO has answered that question. We don't need to revisit it.
Consultation.
Yes.
It must have been when my screen froze before. I didn't actually hear that. So if that's been asked.
Sorry, I didn't know we got into question time for councillors as we do this stuff. But anyway, because I'm more than happy to ask Peter Clark a lot of questions on some of the stuff he talks about.
Can we stop having personal attacks against each other? We're supposed to be working together for the community. Can we just get the CEO to comment on whether there has been any consultation?
Mayor, if you could ask Councillor Clark to abide by that, I'll be more than happy.
Mr. Cowie, can you answer that, please? My computer froze before and I didn't hear the answer to the previous question.
Through the Mayor, I'm not aware of large-scale consultation on this. My answer was around the short time frame, relatively speaking, that officers have had to try and determine where is the best place to site this park to take advantage of the 1.3 million. I know that Heath Gillette and other officers will have had some consultation, but I couldn't give you chapter and verse on who he has spoken to. I jumped in on behalf of Mr. Phillip because he's having some technical difficulties, but it's I'm not pretending that it's been widespread consultation. It will have been more than I know, but not perhaps as much as we would normally like for such a significant opportunity. But officers were keen to put it in front of council as it's, as Councillor Perkins said, free money if we can get it.
Right, so I would like to propose something that might cover off both of the councillors, and that is to undertake. So that doesn't assume that there has or hasn't been any consultation to date. So does that satisfy both councillors?
Yes.
Councillor Demerick?
Fine with me.
Thank you. So that is now the motion on the table. Can you change the word to undertake?
Undertake more community consultation.
Oh.
Don't push it, Councillor Perkins. Has any councillor not spoken on the motion? If not, we'll put it to the vote. Can you just get it up one last time, please? Just to confirm. Right, all those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you. Our next item is OCM 120, Recreation Trails Advisory Committee term extension. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Demerick, over to you.
Mayor, I am putting forward the recommendation that council extends the current Recreation Trails Advisory Committee term until the 30th of July 2021.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Ashton, back to you, Councillor Demerick.
In short, the Recreation Trail Committee has been a committee ongoing for, I think, about 25 years. It's done a lot of work in developing and advising council on the recreation trail strategy. We're at a critical time for the committee at this stage with one part, maybe two parts of the Diamond Creek trail between the Diamond Creek Trail between Diamond Creek and Hurstbridge being undertaken and realised in the next 12 to 18 months. And with council changing over in that period, It would be good to have to keep this group together, who have a broad and fine-grained knowledge of the area. Councillor Ashton is very active in this committee, and I'm sure will speak on the knowledge that the current members bring to it. I suppose the advantage of it is they bring the real fine detail, being regular users and being tied back into large community groups on where things connect, where they, where would be a proper alignment, and how it fits into the broader trail strategy overall. The 11 community members have had a two-year term, and I think by extending it for another 12 months at this critical juncture would be the best thing for the trails going forward, aid the incoming council, and it sort of finishes in short enough time that if they decide to move in another direction, they have the ability to do so within 6 months of taking the reins. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jemerick. Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, I concur with everything that Councillor Jemerick has said. I'd like to add too that, we're at a very pivotal time in that we're just about due to do an audit of the trails and to re-look at things that were put down probably 10 to 15 years ago, which may or may not be still viable. This is a very diverse group, and as Councillor Jemerick has said, they're really, really good at drilling down into the detail. So therefore, they're an incredible resource for us. We've only got a small staff working in this space, and when you've got 11 people plus all out riding, cycling, it gives us a huge amount of information. They're doing work in the Plenty Gorge area. Hopefully, we're going to be doing additional work with Parks Vic. So it is a really good advisory committee. Like many of our committees, I think under this council, we've worked with them well, and I think it would be really advantageous to continue with this group for at least another 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the motion. All those in favour, put it to the vote. All those in favour, and that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Our next item 121, the Council Plan Quarterly Performance Report. Can I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Rankin.
I move that as per the papers.
And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Clark. Thank you, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a very good report. It's identifying that that we are in Q4 here from last financial year. The final report will be published in the annual report. Just a couple of points that I'd like to highlight: the good work that the officers are doing. Second bullet point in number 10, not to say that the others aren't good, but there's some really high level work going on here. Nillumbik's Customer First Strategy is an outstanding program that is being delivered remotely now, and with the implementations that we've got with COVID-19, I think they're doing a tremendous job implementing the customer complaints policy as well. I think that's certainly increasing the level of service that we're providing back to our ratepayers. Another couple of other items just to sort of highlight at high level: the solar farm development program that's going ahead, and the next one particularly with regards to bushfire management, that this council was successful in obtaining grant funding under the Safer Together, strengthening partnerships for bushfire management with local government. What does that mean? Well, it's now given us an extra person to be able to, an extra officer to work within the team. And this aligns particularly with the council bushfire mitigation strategy, which is a huge windfall for the whole community as a whole. So I take my hat off to the officers. I think you're doing a tremendous job. And just the last point, this overall position suggests that council has continued to maintain a solid effort in delivering on the priority actions and significant outcomes for this community, despite COVID-19 outside of our control. So I take my hat off to the officers. I think you guys are doing a terrific job in this space. Keep up the good work and look forward to seeing the final report in our annual report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Clark. Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Our next item is 122, the Council Plan 2017 to 2021 Annual Action Plan. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Rankin.
Happy to move, Mayor, as per the papers again.
Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Clark, back to you, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, there's a couple of points here to highlight. In point number 2 of the recommendation, amend the actions to 16. We've 2 that have actively been resolved this evening. Well, one was last week, the Diamond Creek plan, and then the Eltham Town plan has now been moved as well. So that probably needs to be altered, and I'm sure the officers will clean that up in the corresponding report. But all in all, again, it's some good work that the officers are working with and helping us to deliver our council plan, and which is part of the action plan for 2021. So again, good work to the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Clark, do you wish to speak? Any other councillors wish to comment? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. I've been asked by a couple of the councillors if we could have a short break. So we will have a break for exactly 5 minutes and then return. Is everybody in agreement with that? All right, 5 minutes.
Just you and me left, Carl. We could get a fair bit done, you know.
Peter?
I'm still listening.
No, it's fine. I didn't hear what you said, Councillor Clark.
I said we could get, I thought there was only the 2 of us left. I said we could get a fair bit done now.
Just wait.
Councillor Perkins brought in the mood lighting. Very harsh calling you the elephant in the room, John. I thought that was just...
Thank you, councillors. Our next item is OCM 123, Assembly of Councillors. Can I have a mover for the motion, please?
Happy to move that, Mayor.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Brooker, thank you. There it is on the screen. Back to you, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. There's really nothing to speak of. It's more just a procedural motion. Thank you.
Councillor Brooker? No. Anybody else wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Our next item is OCM 124, the website upgrade contract. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Rankin.
I think Councillor Clark was moving that.
He got in first, did he?
Yep.
Councillor Clark. Sorry, Councillor Clark.
Just trying to move things along, Mayor, you know me.
As per the papers, it's just noting the report, and you're seconding it, Councillor Rankin?
Yes, happy to.
Anybody wish to speak to it? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Our next item is OCM 125, a tender report amendment to contract 1920-87, large site and street lighting electricity Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Clark. Second, and Councillor Rankin. All those in favour?
I didn't get to speak to it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't think you did. Over to you, Councillor Clark.
I just wanted to see if anybody could remember the political logo for Turn on the Lights. Any takers? The campaign that had Turn on the Lights as the slogan? No, we'll move on then.
Thank you. All those in favour? And that is carried. We now move on to notices of motion. And our first notice of motion is Norm 00620, disposal of fill on Green Wedge land. Councillor Clark.
Now, I wish to seek leave of council to incorporate item A within the notice of motion that I put to the papers. I think councillors have got it. I'll read it if you wish.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rankin just picked the post, I think. Do you wish to discuss that? Otherwise, anybody wish to discuss it? Otherwise, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Well, hang on. Can we at least see it?
You should have it in front of you.
I've got a blank screen. There it is.
Where's part A?
No, that's the original one.
That's what I'm put. So there's the same as the original one with part A included. The part A reads, do you want me to read it, Mayor?
Yes, you can read it.
Council does not support disposal of clean fill. Sorry, take that word on. There's a typo there. Clean fill on land zoned Green Wedge or rural conservation unless it is a direct agricultural purpose with a volume less than 100 cubic metres, and request officers commence the preparation of a planning scheme amendment to achieve this outcome, similar to that currently operating in the Hume planning scheme.
And I presume by the rest of it, well, it's the same, but this is actually just to grant you leave to add those words in.
Correct.
So if I can go back to our...
Can I ask a question about the addition?
To staff or to Councillor Clark?
Councillor Clark.
Councillor Clark?
The volume less than 100 cubic metres, is that regardless of the size of the allotment, or is that is there a time frame associated with that? Like if I'm on an undersized allotment, can I have 100 cubic metres, you know, every couple of weeks or per annum or every 5 years?
So to be honest, I'm not the best person to answer this. Probably best to get Rosa to answer it. The reference that I'd have is that it's the same as is proposed in the Hume planning scheme. I did read the panel report of when they implemented it in the Hume planning scheme, and they came up with 100 cubic metres in that and how they dealt with it. But I can't recall the additional detail. Rosa may be able to assist me in that space, but that's the reason for it.
Just to give people an idea of what that means, after my last house burnt down and I moved into the current one, my dam wall was totally demolished and I needed just, I think it was about 90 to repair my dam wall. So it's an indicative amount of soil that people on rural lots would use. I take your point, Councillor Perkins. I think it is a little bit prescriptive. Whether Rosa has any opinions there?
So the 100 cubic square metres has come from the Hume planning scheme, and that amendment that introduced that requirement into the Hume planning scheme really examined what was considered to be earthworks associated with an agricultural use and what would differentiate those works to land that's been brought onto, field that's been brought onto land such as the likes that is currently occurring at Chapel Lane. There was significant commentary in that panel decision, and there was a lot of, landowners that are farmers or undertaking agricultural pursuits on their land that indicated that there are projects that they undertake from time to time on their land, and those projects never amount to anything more than 100 cubic square metres, and would not wish to go through the planning permit application process for projects that are legitimate agricultural pursuits or would service a legitimate agricultural pursuit on their land. So I don't think it's a one-off circumstance, but certainly they'd have to advise council of or link it to an actual agricultural pursuit that they're actually undertaking on their land, such as the example that Mayor Egan has just provided.
Mayor, just to add to that, it might assist. The only thing I'd say is if this proceeded, the only way it would occur would be through a planning scheme amendment. Most likely they would have a panel, an independent panel would be appointed to review this and determine it. And whatever they concluded would be ending up a debate as a result of that panel report. So if people had a different number in mind, presumably less, then that's what a panel would advise on. And my motion talks about not greater than, if you like, or less than 100 cubic metres.
I suppose just to follow up on the question, it was, I've got a similar provision in my notice of motion, but it was just after submitting the notice of motion, I was then turned my mind to should there be some other parameters around it in terms of 100 cubic metres over a period, or does it like arguably something like Apted's orchard would probably need 100 cubic metres of fertiliser, perhaps annually or 6 monthly. I don't know, but yeah, different circumstances for different agricultural pursuits, I would imagine. But yeah, that's okay.
Point that you'd need a condition through the provisions that said 100 cubic metres based on providing sufficient justification to warrant, from an agricultural pursuit perspective. So that there would have to be that link, and they'd have to justify it to council.
Okay. Yeah.
If it was more.
Also, clean fill is very different to sandy loam. Like they're not bringing in topsoil; they're bringing in clay and that sort of thing. So
anyway, this is just about getting leave.
So this is actually just, we're supposed to be having a discussion on giving Councillor Clark leave. Councillor Brooker.
Question. Yeah, I certainly, are we voting on the leave first? And
yes.
then
This is purely about the leave, so any discussion about the actual item needs to wait. So if there's no more conversation as to Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, look, I also think the pertinent word in the clause A is disposal, and I actually think that should be put into highlight, because I think it is that idea of disposing as opposed to using or having a use. So when it's purely disposal, that is very different. And I think that word disposal is the pertinent word in that paragraph A. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. If nobody else wants to speak to those actual words or giving Councillor Clark leave, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. So that now becomes the substantive motion. So back to you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Brooker.
Yeah, just a question to the mover now of the motion. I actually support A, but not B. So I'm just wondering if you would consider splitting your motions in two. So we could have a vote on A and a vote on, is it B and C?
Well, B has 5 parts. There's only a B.
Yes. Well, I'm very comfortable to support A. I'm less, maybe he'll persuade me, but I'm less inclined to support B. So if he separates those motions for everybody, everyone can have a vote on A and then a vote on B, because they're two quite distinct things.
Councillor Clark.
I move them as A and B. I don't know if I've got a seconder yet, but that's what I'm trying to do, because if we don't write to the minister, then we've got to get it, do a whole lot more.
Can I have a second to the motion?
I seconded that motion.
Thank you.
The second one. Thank you, Councillor Ashton. We're just having quite a bit of a delay here. Sorry.
So the answer to Councillor Brooker is a no. History would tell us that Councillor Clark doesn't need Councillor Brooker's vote.
Yes.
Back to you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, part A is fairly straightforward, and I think, frankly, Councillor Ashton picked it up a moment ago. This basically says we don't support the disposal of clean fill land on zone grid, wedge and rural conservation. And I'm just referring to something that we can do, which is to commence a planning scheme amendment to stop that ourselves. Some would have said a council with a green wedge shire in its logo might have done this years ago, even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but it hasn't. So it's up to us to fix it.
Or 3.
Or even 3, you could have done it when you were chair, you're right. But the exercise really is about trying to get this done and give some respite both to the residents at the end of the day who are in Chapel Lane, and not to have this circumstance happen right throughout the Shire again. This did come as a bolt out of the blue, to be honest, to me, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I wasn't aware of the previous debate in VCAT. And nonetheless, we need to jump on it and deal with the matter. I was reminded, nonetheless, of the previous letter that the Mayor had written to the Honourable Richard Wynne about the dumping of soil in rural and green wedge areas. So once we discovered all of that, I certainly wrote, with the support of officers, the Resolution B, and then having the wisdom of hindsight, having looked at that and gone, no, well, we need to say something about what we can do in the first instance, not just leave it to the Minister to have to resolve this particular matter. I'd have to say, it doesn't seem to me that we're in conflict with the Minister. The only thing that we're trying to do, in effect, is remind the Minister to sort of get on with the job. We have got a letter back to the Minister indicating that the Minister supports and took to the last election a policy to tighten controls on better protect the green wedges, to stop this sort of dumping of fill into those areas. He indicated in his letter to the Mayor that he expected that review to be completed by the end of 2019 and to be able to legislate controls over the placing of fill. That was in his letter to the Minister of the 16th of June of last year. And then suggested we follow up with Jane Homewood if we wanted to pursue that. Well, we haven't got any response. It's not before the Parliament. It's fair to say there's a few issues like a pandemic took over and a few other matters, so I'm not going to be critical of the Minister. I have actually written to Ms Homewood last week asking her for advice on whether or not that work has been completed and indeed whether or not there has been any resolution of those matters. I haven't got a reply to that letter. I called the office today to see when I might get a reply, and was politely informed we'd expect probably within the week, that it had been referred by Jane to other officers to respond to, and unfortunately they were away for a couple of days. But expected to have something back probably later on this week as an update to the Minister's letter on where that was going. So it does seem entirely reasonable that we remind the Minister to try and implement some immediate reforms in that space, to do that as quickly as he could. It's certainly fair to say he's already looking at those matters, so it's not new to him. We don't have to brief him on it. He's already got work been going on in this space for over 12 months. So essentially this resolution seeks to do 2 things. It firstly says, we don't want the clean fill there, and we don't think it should happen in our Shire, nor in other sort of peri-urban shires. It then asks the Minister to assist us in the space and to bring in the legislation, which is what he's talking about, and then to request the Minister to improve the planning controls to regulate the practice, and basically then also to use our role in the MAV to advocate for amendments in the peri-urban planning schemes to achieve what I've otherwise outlined. So this resolution should be fairly well supported by everybody. I wasn't quite sure why Councillor Brooker, why he wouldn't want to support talking to the Minister, because the Minister's already talking about it. It is simply reminding him that it's ongoing. And then, of course, to be able to get the support of members Vicky Ward, Jenny L. Green and Sean Lean, who's the Upper House Minister and also happens to be the Local Government Minister, towards seeking their support and advocacy for that outcome, including the Shadow Minister, Tim Smith, who if there is a change of government at some point and that previous government, the current government has not either re-elected or completed this work, that he equally would have a policy parameter which would define and deal with that. And I've had a teleconference, I think as the Mayor has as well, with Mr. Smith to argue the case here, and he's undertaken to have a look at that and to proceed with a view towards dealing with this matter. But I'm not going to hang out for resolution of that matter. That's some time away. We really need to be talking with the government and just pursuing the work which is underway as quickly as is possible, as well as commencing our own planning scheme amendment. I should say, and we'll talk about it probably a bit later on, but there is good work happening by the officers diligently to try and resolve the problems at both Chapel Lane sites, so that we can get that resolved through planning matters. Certainly we don't want this to continue. The officers are doing that work, and that will hopefully conclude in the next 10 days to 2 weeks. There's legal action advice being taken how we can do this in the most efficient and best manner. So I commend the resolution. We've got more work to do this space, and I feel sorry for the residents. I've been out and had a good look, but this is a first start, as well as getting on with the matter that we need to fix on their specific sites during our normal administrative processes in the next 10 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Look, on the 18th of August, state government's new Green Wedge document, particularly with relation to agricultural land, will be available for people to comment on. And I would encourage the Nillumbik community to find that document and include this issue, highlight it to government. I believe there may be something in that plan, but at the moment we're not able to disclose anything. Also, I've mentioned to councillors that it is not just the dumping of fill in the Green Wedge. We also have sites that get regular dumping of tyres, machinery and other waste, and often they're not visible. This site is visible, so it has come to many people's attention, but there are other pockets around Nillumbik, particularly in the rural conservation zone and in the Green Wedge zone, where there are other issues such as this occurring, and I would like us to also pursue them whilst we're looking at this. As per Councillor Dubert's comments, clean fill is not necessarily, it is an issue, but also we're looking at clay and loam soils which will not generate any vegetation, and we're also looking out for contaminated soils. So I think it's quite a big piece of work, and I think that we need to be very much aware that there are different types of soils that may be brought in, that these will be brought in for economic gain and not necessarily by small landholders trying to do work on their properties. And I think council officers will be doing a lot of work in this space. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brooker.
Sorry, I'm unmuted. Yeah, thank you. Look, I won't be supporting this motion, mostly because I think this is, I would call the Harry Houdini of notices of motion, and that is the master of misdirection. Look over here, look over here. We're writing to the minister and trying to address this issue over here. But the issue that is front and centre and ought to be front and centre, and the issue that we ought to be taking action on immediately, is the issue in Chapel Lane. That is the issue that residents are expecting progress on. It's all, so that, and Councillor Clark's item A goes to that, as I think Councillor Perkins' notice of motion does, in terms of the broad parameters around what is happening at Chapel Lane, at 265 and 130 Chapel Lane. I think that is the priority here for us. We can spend an awful lot of time being distracted on a chase down getting a minister to do something about something. I think it far better we focus our resources on what is immediately on our back door, and that is an issue of someone claiming an auxiliary agricultural use in the rural conservation zone, and which does then require the planning scheme amendment that Councillor Clark has itemised in Part A. But that is the focus, or ought to be the focus. Now, I do think that, you know, we've written to the Minister. We've written to the Minister 12 months ago. The Minister replied, and he talked about, you know, his overarching thing of protecting agricultural land, and there's provisions in that discussion paper that Councillor Ashton talked about in August. We've already got that. We can go down that path already and make that submission in August about protecting agricultural land. It's already done. That framework is already established. We don't need to double up and write again to the Minister when we've already done so. So what we have to do is not fall for this misdirection and deal with what is in our face right this week, or certainly in the next few weeks on our own doorstep. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Perkins.
Look, I think Councillor Brooker makes a fair point. You know, what I label Councillor Clark as Harry Houdini, you know, I've never considered that in the past, not in that framework anyway. But, you know, it was clear that, you know, in the wisdom of hindsight, Councillor Clark could see that his notice of motion, you know, really was lacking. In terms of his notice of motion was all about, you know, look over there, look over there. This has got nothing to do with us. This is a lot of the commentary that we've heard from the Mayor as well. There's nothing we can do. They don't need a permit. It's illegal, but they don't need a permit. The state government's got to step in. Somebody else has to sort this out for us. Whereas the state government have been saying, well, it is your problem. You are you're a responsible authority. You've got existing powers to deal with that. You know, concentrate on your own backyard and work on that. You know, you've got the powers. We're already giving you the powers. Other councils in a similar position have exercised their powers and they've stopped this from happening. So in the wisdom of hindsight, I think for Councillor Clark was reading my notice of motion, where I've sort of said, well, you know, I'm not a wannabe member of Parliament, of the state Parliament. I'm an active councillor for Nillumbik Shire Council. And that's where I can try to have some influence, in terms of advocating to our own bureaucracy, you know, to our planners, to our planning managers, to sort of say, you know, this is the direction I would like you to go down. You know, if at all possible, can you exhaust all avenues to sort out this Chapel Lane mess? Because it's arguable that they do need a permit for this. You know, it's either a nominate use or it's certainly not an agricultural use, and they need a permit. So that's the direction that you know that I'm at, and my notice of motion really talks about you know, working within the parameters of Nillumbik. Having said that, so I think it is a bit mischievous in terms of this approach where something happens that we don't like, and rather than take some sort of responsibility for it ourselves, we try to always blame the state government. I've never seen that before in the previous two councils. Like, this is a unique council in terms of that approach, and it hasn't mattered you know, what colour of state government we're talking about, whether it's Liberal or Labor in power and previous councils. Like, that's never been our approach to, you know, the knee-jerk reaction to blame the state government. But that's what this council often seems to do. Perhaps it would be different if there's a Liberal state government. I'm not sure. You know, the motion in itself, I can support it because I don't think it does any harm, aside from the thing that Councillor Brooker sort of says. It certainly is a distraction, and my message to officers would be concentrate on the Nillumbik planning scheme and concentrate on enforcing the provisions that currently exist within the Nillumbik planning scheme, and tell ESG and the other company that are operating in Chapel Lane they have to stop or we'll take enforcement action.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I speak, I might just ask Rosa a couple of questions, and I hope I don't put you too much on the spot here. Can I clarify that Nillumbik council officers have done everything possible within our planning permits to be able to enforce the cessation of their agricultural works, so to speak? Have we done everything possible as a shire before we have to go back to the minister again?
So with regard to 265 Chapel Lane in Doreen, as soon as we became aware of the large number of trucks bringing in fuel, officers attended the site and through negotiations with the site operator, asked them to cease works until we could investigate the matter more thoroughly and come to a conclusion about what next steps we would be able to take. So those works have ceased on site and they gave us an original undertaking of 14 days and to date they haven't started as yet.
And where are you and the officers at chasing down where the permits are actually required for them to continue work?
Yep, so we sought some legal advice from Marcus Lane Group and in that advice they provided to us, they said that it was the information that was at hand was inconclusive for them to be able to understand whether or to advise council as to whether a planning permit is required. And so in order to rectify that, we have now written to both the site operator, ESG, and the owner of the land, seeking some detailed documents that will help us to determine whether the use is for an agricultural use or ancillary to an agricultural use, or if indeed it is a commercial business that's operating on the land that requires a planning permit because it's an innominate use.
And I understand we've also, or we're in the process of trying to get some hydrologists.
Yes. So council has engaged a hydrologist to undertake their own assessment of the works that are currently occurring on the site at 265 Chapel Lane. That work has not come back as yet. So once it does, it'll help us, I suppose, better understand whether the rate of flow across the boundary, which is the condition in the planning scheme at the moment, that triggers a planning permit or not. So in the planning scheme, in the green wedge zone, it says that earthworks do not need a permit if they do not change the rate of flow across the boundary. Their hydrologist's report, ESG's hydrologist's report, indicates that the rate of flow wouldn't be changed. So we're just getting a second view on that. And that'll determine whether a permit is required, and that then allows us to undertake any enforcement action.
Okay, so that's for that one particular site. What about the other site that's also got the question mark above it at the moment?
So 130 Chapel Lane is in a slightly different category. 130 Chapel Lane, when the operator originally came to council, they sought a certificate of compliance. That certificate of compliance was not issued by council at the time, and we ended up at VCAT. The tribunal that considered that matter ultimately formed the view that a certificate of compliance should not be issued and upheld council's decision not to issue one. That didn't mean that they didn't get a planning permit for the works. All that said was this certificate of compliance, which is essentially a piece of paper that says everything is above board, you don't need a planning permit, and there's no breach of the planning scheme. In the decision, or coming to that decision, the tribunal member made a lot of commentary around the use of the land and also about the hydrologist's report. So turning to the matter of the use of the land, the tribunal member found that the works were being undertaken to support a future agricultural use, and so therefore that would fall under the category of a Section 1 permit not required requirements. So the use itself would not need a planning permit. And because the member has made some very long commentary and made some comments around the use, it is difficult for council to go back and argue that the use now needs a planning permit.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, that tribunal member went into some significant analysis and review of the hydrologist's report for 130 Chapel Lane. And in analysing that report, they critically analysed the assumptions that were used as part of that engineer's assessment, and found that there was some concern, and that some concern with the assumptions made, and that they possibly were incorrect, and that indeed the rate of flow across the boundary would be amended or such that it would then trigger a planning permit. That then meant that they would have been in breach of the planning scheme had they followed through with that engineering report and its recommendations. And that's why the tribunal upheld council's decision not to issue the certificate of compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So following that tribunal decision, they've reviewed the works on the site and undertaken an amendment to or created a whole new hydrologist's report that does not change the rate of flow across the boundary. That means that they do not need a planning permit for the works, the earthworks at 130 Chapel Lane.
Okay.
Now, if indeed at the end of the works, once all the earthworks have been completed, and we go on site with our own hydrologist, and that hydrologist deems that the rate of flow across the boundary has changed, then we can take enforcement action.
Enforcement action.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Can I ask a quick question just to follow on from that before we lose Rosa?
Yep. Yes, Councillor Perkins.
Rosa, just in reference to hydrologist reports, so we've seen the hydrologist report of 265, and that's being peer reviewed. We've seen the original hydrologist report for 130, which didn't meet the requirement from VCAT. Have we seen the new hydrologist report on, because that would be on, it would be on that basis that they could say, well, we don't need a permit. And,
Sure.
So what's council's interaction been at 130 in terms of, we've got some knowledge they've got a new hydrologist report. Have we seen it and have we peer reviewed that one like we're doing with 265?
Through the Mayor, we haven't got a copy of the updated hydrologist report, but we'll be seeking to get a copy of that. We haven't as yet obviously undertaken a peer review of that one.
So arguably they're on shaky ground as well.
They
at
could
130.
be, or,
Yep.
or possibly not.
Right, back to you, Councillor Rankin. You've got your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. So thank you, Rosa, for answering those, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot there, but I think it's fair to say, councillors, that we've learned tonight, and we've had some briefings on it as well, that council's doing everything we can. We're pushing hard. We're talking to the residents. We're talking to the landowners. We're doing everything we can, and I think Councillor Clark has got most of it right here by his amendment, that we don't want to be sitting on our hands waiting for council to wait for an outcome. We want to be covering all bases for our residents to ensure that we've got the backstop of government as well behind us on this. So we really need to make sure that we speak to the planning minister, we get our local members, Vicky Ward and Danielle Green and Sean Lean as well on board, and get them to help us to support this. So rather than just waiting, and I know Rosa and her team and the officers are doing an immense job and trying to find everything that they can to ensure the cessation of the work, but I'm sorry, I'll be supporting Councillor Clark's motion here and pushing forward with the letters back to the ministers and back to our MPs and looking for their support with us along this journey as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Rosa, just one question from me. In relation to Councillor Clark's point A, what would be the quickest we could get a planning scheme up similar to Hume? Under 2 years.
A normal planning scheme amendment with the full exhibition process is around about 18 months to undertake. That's provided the Minister authorises the amendment in the first instance.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Perkins, Demeric?
I've spoken, but I can go again.
I think Councillor Demeric, you haven't spoken, have you? Do you wish to speak? No. Back to you, Councillor Clark, right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think Rose's summation was really good in the sense that there is a lot going on these sites. We are doing all of the work that we can to prepare ourselves to be able to ensure that this ceases and does not continue. But you can't just barnstorm in there tomorrow and say stop and you can't do it. I mean, those rules, we haven't even got cessation rights. The reality of 265 at the moment is if they kept actually dumping fill there, our only other course of action would be to try and enforce some enforcement and go to the magistrates court. We've got no powers to actually walk in there like a policeman and go stop today or we'll throw you in jail. We can't do that. So the reality is we've got to go through, unfortunately, a bit of a bureaucratic process to get all these documents so that we are in a position to issue the appropriate planning responses on 265 and 130. I'm not sure how many other councillors have been up. I've certainly sat up there during the day, watched what's going on. I've been on site. I've met a couple of the residents to firsthand see what's going on. There is no doubt, and the blame game doesn't help in this space, but there is no doubt that we should have started a planning scheme at least 4 years ago, if not 8 years ago, when these things came to light. But that didn't happen. You can blame all the people under the sun that you like and, you know, be good fun doing that, but it's not going to change where we are up to today. There is in reality only one person who can put a planning scheme amendment through in the next 6 weeks to stop this beyond doubt. And that is the Minister of Planning. And that's why in B1 I say to request the Minister of Planning and initiate immediate reforms. Because like he can do with a 20-part 4 amendment on pushing through a road, which he's going to do with Fitzsimmons Lane or anything else and do it in 8 weeks and not have any community consultation, he could do it here. That is the opportunity. And there's no doubt the local members could ask him to do that. Now, I can understand his residents because, you know, there are not others who could have a different view. But that's the essential reason why, Councillor Brookie, you should be backing this resolution. He's the only one that can fix it overnight. We're going to do whatever else we can to continue to curtail it going forward. But these resolutions are important because it sets up the framework to what should have happened. We know there's another one at 47 Broad Gully Road that's gone on for some time, which should have also been actioned. I know Councillor Perkins is picking up the ball again and trying to get that resolved. But, you know, there were signs some years back, but it didn't occur. And this is the way to start and move it forward when we've become aware of it in the last 2 to 3 weeks. I commend the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. So we'll put that to the vote. All in favour? All against? Division? Can I call a division?
Yeah.
All in favour? Councillor Egan, Councillor Clark, Councillor Ashton, Councillor Perkins, Councillor Merrick, Councillor Rankin. All those against? Councillor Brooker, and that is carried. We now move on to your motion, Councillor Perkins. And personally, I don't see why we can't do both and cover every possible avenue off. So over to you. Thank
you. So I'll seek leave from Council to make a minor or a couple of very minor amendments to the motion. We've discussed in the pre-meet, but the dot point 1, the Council Office will prepare a report for the August FNC of the commercial dumping of soil at 265-130 Chapel Lane by ESG. I'd like to remove the words by ESG. It's become clear that ESG is not operating 130 Chapel Lane. Apparently, it's another company, Landfix, I believe it was. So I'm moving to strike the words by ESG. And the fifth and the other thing is dot point 5, where I say council immediate request. No, it's not that one. It's number 4. Council further requests explanations as to why recent VCAT red dot decisions on soil dumping and a green wedge are not applicable in these circumstances. I'd like to strike recent, strike the word recent, and strike the words red dot. So I'd like further explanations as to why VCAT decisions on soil dumping and a green wedge are not applicable in these circumstances. So that's the content of my moving of council leave to amend the notice of motion. I'll put that and go forward.
Do you have a seconder, Councillor Perkins? Can I have the screen staff? Thank you. Councillor Brooker. Any discussion on giving Councillor Perkins leave? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Over to you, Councillor Perkins. So that's now the substantive motion.
So really, given that I had to put this notice of motion up a week ago, we're still, as a council, fairly short of bereft of much information on this whole matter around soil dumping in Chapel Lane and anywhere else, to be honest. It has been an issue that's been ongoing. We've recently learned that there was a letter sent to the minister. There was some conjecture as to whether or not he had responded. He had indeed responded. There wasn't a briefing that associated that letter. Like, we weren't really, as a council group, weren't really across what that was about. We were told there was a request from Yarra Rangers, but that was about it. It's like a letter come back from the minister. Again, council never saw that letter. We as a council just need to, this is an issue for the green wedge. We need to be briefed on this type of issue. I think it has hit us, full on. It's been a shock to everybody. The extent of the commercial dumping in Chapel Lane. What the motion asks for is a report on what's happened in Chapel Lane, why we can't do anything, and it's really trying to test that notion that a permit's not required, because that's been put out by some councillors that a permit's not required. I've never been convinced of that. I've never, from all the correspondence that I've seen, there's certainly very strong arguments to suggest that a permit is required. It's either not, ancillary. The current use is not ancillary to agricultural use or otherwise it's in nominate and then falls in section 2 as a permit required. So, I need some explanation. I think the community needs some explanation as to what is the final determination of officers. We want them to explore VCAT decisions. There've been numerous VCAT decisions. I noticed the Green Wedge Coalition Group wrote again to all councillors today, highlighting four VCAT decisions in other municipalities where, whether or not a permit was granted wasn't the fact they were highlighting. They were highlighting the fact that a permit was required in all of those cases of soil dumping. And the final one is along the lines of Councillor Clark's previous motion is to request the Planning Minister help out the Nillumbik Green Shire and Green Wedge and every other green wedge in Victoria by introducing a schedule for green wedges that puts an upper limit of 100 cubic metres of soil to landfill.
Just one moment, Councillor Perkins. Yes, Councillor Clark.
Point of order is he's talking about something which isn't in his resolution. He has not put in his resolution anything about 100 cubic metres or anything else.
Yes, it was. It was on the screen.
Yes. Yes.
Just for a moment, can you just go back to,
point number
it was an
5.
extra point that was added in, which is why he needed leave to change his original amendment. It's point number 5.
No, that was always there from the original notice of motion. I did contact Blago earlier in the week when I saw the papers, and I saw that dot point 5 wasn't actually on there, and I was told by officers that dot point 5 was going to be amended on the internet for the public document, and it is on the public document on the agenda on the internet, and that all councillors were going to be advised of that other dot point.
Okay. Well,
I haven't got it. So he hasn't. Councillor Clark hasn't either.
Which is why I'm raising it. So the last item, which I hadn't seen until now, was
Council immediately requests the Planning Minister to introduce into the schedule for green wedges a 100 cubic metre limit to landfill.
Thank you. I just wasn't before me on the papers that had been sent to me. Thank you.
Just before we keep going, can I just ask staff whether that is exactly or not exactly the same, but it's not going to clash with Peter Clark's bit on that? They're not, it's, beg your pardon? Rosa, can you answer that? They're not going to confuse each other, those two motions about the 100 cubic metres, the way they were written?
Is it possible to bring up that motion again, just so I can see the wording?
Can you just put them both up on the screen? Is that, you can't?
I think we potentially need that word disposal in there again, because
that's what I was wondering, to make them sort of.
I think that could be a very dangerous precedent for.
Just one moment. Jane's cottoned on to exactly what I was talking about. It's not landfill, it's disposal of.
You're right. So
the same words.
Landfill under the planning scheme would mean a place, something totally different. It's not land used to put fill onto. It's like a landfill.
So it needs to be disposal of whatever the words in Councillor Clark's motion were. Disposal of. Can you
I would probably not say disposal. It's for the placement of clean fill on rural land.
All right.
Or green wedge land.
So Council immediately requests the Planning Minister introduce a schedule for a 100 cubic metre limit, schedule for green wedges for a 100 cubic metre limit.
Of fill, limit of fill.
Of fill.
On land in the green wedge.
Of fill. On land in the green wedge. Okay.
We need to take out clean fill, because we don't want dirty fill.
Oh, it would have to be clean fill. We wouldn't accept anything else.
Can you put clean on that, please? And that's still.
Do you have to say on land in the green wedge, given that we've set a schedule for green wedges? Can you just take out in the green wedge? Council immediately requests the Planning Minister introduce into the schedule for green wedges a 100 metre limit of clean fill.
Yep. Into the schedule for the green wedge zone, or into the schedule for the green wedge zone and the rural conservation zone.
But some people might need 100 cubic metres for a house.
Yeah, well, if they do, they just need a planning permit.
All right. Well,
so they can still get it, but it triggers a permit.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. I'm happy with that. Okay. Now back to you, Councillor Perkins.
And the word on needs to go.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
All right. Sorry, I forgot where I was before I was interrupted.
So you need leave to amend the resolution again. You can't just amend it as he goes and goes, it's a good day, I'll change a few more words every 10 minutes.
Councillor Clark's correct. So you're seeking leave to amend that last point?
Yes.
Okay.
Great suggestion.
And a seconder? Councillor Demery, all those in favour, or does anybody want to speak against it? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Back to you, Councillor Perkins. You've got one.
And against? I think we had a dissenter. Did we?
No. No.
Anyone against? No? There he is.
Oh, you are?
One. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't even see that. Can we do that again? All those in favour? All those against?
There you go. There we go. Thank you.
Carried. Back to you, Councillor Perkins. You have 2 minutes left.
Yeah, so there has been, I've certainly received, a a whole lot more valuable information from members of the community, unfortunately, that I have from inside of council in terms of briefing. And you know, what I'm really trying to do is flush out the information, let the public see and understand what's going on. If for whatever reason we determine that it's beyond our powers and we can't require them to cease work because we haven't got those powers, or we've determined they don't need a permit. You know, I just want that everyone to know. You know, I need to know. I'd certainly like to have a briefing. You know, it's arguable that we should have had a briefing on this matter, you know, 8, 10, 20 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Perhaps when we wrote the letter to the minister might have been an appropriate time. You know, we can concentrate on looking backwards and blaming other councils, but we have to take just as much responsibility for ourselves. I know this came up as an issue in my ward at 47 Black Gully Road very early on in this term. You know, I sent an email to officers with the photos I was provided by, you know, residents of the area, and it was very quickly resolved. You know, the officers went on site, told the developer, you know, a guy who was developing land on the inside of the urban growth boundary and owned land on the outside of the urban growth boundary, and he was dumping soil from one of his properties onto his green wedge land, and he was very quickly told that you know, he needed to cease. He needed to cease that work, stop doing any work, in fact, until he got a planning permit. That pretty well resolved. He continued to do some work to try to spread out the soil and cover his tracks. Again, he was told he had to stop work. I understood the matter had been resolved. Recently, I've been told by residents up there that those piles of dirt are still there and they need to be removed. So I suppose the short story is officers have been very reactive in the past in terms of understanding the will of Green Wedge residents, and we just would like that to continue, and for the residents and councillors to be heard. We need to stop this dumping of fill now. Thank you.
Was that inside the urban growth boundary, in which case it's not in a green wedge zone, and therefore there's different rules apply? I can tell you, Mayor Egan, Rosa might not be across it because it predated her time with us. Right.
But the property itself was on the edge of the urban growth boundary. It was on the outside, so it was in the green wedge on rural conservation zone.
That's why I was asking you, because when you're talking, you said inside, so I just wanted to clarify.
Well, he owned property inside, and he was the developer actually, you know, subdividing land on the inside of the urban growth boundary, and he was taking, you know, clean fill from inside to outside. He owned both properties. Yeah.
So covering off both bases. Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brooker.
Oh, sorry. I would just say I thought that dot point 5 was, rather than writing to the minister, was that was sort of more writing to us for a planning scheme amendment or commencing a planning scheme amendment, which I thought went to the Councillor Clark's point A. I don't think it's quite doing that, but if we can use that as a pretext for a planning scheme amendment, or, you know, to go down that road, which I think there's universal support for, I guess that's good enough for me. But I think Councillor Perkins is right. What we want to establish is at 265 and 130 Chapel Lane, the 265 is an anominate Section 2 use. That seems to be the standard that's been used in similar. We can never say identical, but it seems to be the standard that's been used in similar, on the face of it, cases. In the case of 130 Chapel Lane is a more complicated, I guess, beast to work through. But what we do know is that there's been a hydrology report done that we haven't seen. And we need to check it out. We need to examine it. So we have a baseline to establish if it is going to be changed in the future. Because that hydrology report at 130 is at odds with the VCAT decision of several years earlier, where the hydrology report suggested that there was the flow of water that would change the land. So that's the, I guess, the complexity around 130. But we all need to get all of this information out, and we need a report which is what this motion does. And then I think we'll all be better informed to work through the next steps, because that's what's going to be in front of us far earlier than the minister can reply about fixing up this for the whole state of Victoria. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Clark.
I don't think I've got an opportunity to speak again, have I?
Ms. Jones, have you spoken to this item yet?
I don't think so. I actually just think it's ironic. In a time when we talk about erosion and losing topsoil and climate change, a lot of people actually need topsoil, and they need what they're taking off these sites. It's a shame stuff's being taken off, but you know, there's a lot of properties that actually need topsoil, and here we are with a whole lot being dumped on existing land which has topsoil. So I think as a council, you know, we could potentially play a role in diverting soil to where it's needed. You know, one of the biggest criticisms of agricultural use and land use in the green wedge is that we create erosion. So, you know, I'm as somebody that's previously bought in topsoil or bought in fill, here we have someone who's desperately trying to dump it. You know, as a council, we don't seem to be able to match those things up. And unfortunately, we're getting a whole heap of topsoil where we don't particularly need it. So anyway, yeah, I'm really happy for both amendments tonight, and I congratulate both Councillor Perkins and Councillor Clark on taking this on board. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Mayor, I don't think this resolution does and achieves what the community wants. What the community wants is the quickest way to curtailing the activities that happen on 130 and 265 Chapel Lane. And this is not specific about doing that. This talks around it. It picks up some of the resolutions that we've already moved. You know, Councillor Perkins, item 5, trying to make sure it's the same as what we've already moved earlier on. The matter about you know, history lesson on what's gone on here isn't going to help anybody. And indeed, you know, I've read the red dot decisions. They're not going to fix the problem. All they are is a measure when when Director of Planning's got the information which she's seeking, which will enable her to make a judgment as to how we can prevent this from occurring. So I don't think that the resolution actually fixes anything in its own right, just gives us a report on the history, what's gone on, what officers have had meetings with who and whatever else, and seeks to sort of assume that why a permit is not required. Well, it's all about conjecture. We actually are going out getting the facts with a view to stopping it. So my proposition is that I want to move an amendment. And the amendment would be a simple one. It would build on Resolution 1 in Councillor Perkins' motion, and it would read for the officers, because I can't type on your screen.
Can you just bring up that motion for us to look at? Councillor Perkins' motion, please. Yep, go.
So my amendment would be that council officers prepare a report for the August FNC on the commercial dumping of soil at 265 and 130 Chapel Lane, and what options are available for council to curtail this activity. Actually, sorry, available to cease this activity.
That goes without saying. You know, that's the whole idea of a report. You have officer recommendations in a report. That's the intent of a report. It's
Mayor, you still there?
Yes, I am. Can you just let Councillor Clark finish the motion, the proposed amendment, then you can comment, Councillor Perkins.
You can speak after if I get a seconder. That the council was prepare a report for the August FNC on the commercial dumping of soil at 265 and 130 Chapel Lane and what apps are available to cease this activity, full stop. And then I delete the balance, 2, 3, 4 and 5, because we've already dealt with it and the report will deal with all of those matters. And if we haven't already fixed it by then, will tell us what other options we've got. So
Have you got a
2, 3, 4 and 5.
seconder for that, Councillor Clark?
Yes, Mayor, I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Rankin. Back to you, Councillor Perkins.
So no, it's not. It's actually me.
Oh.
Sorry, before we do that, sorry, Mayor, 2 things. Looking at the time, I move that we go over to, that we extend the time.
Thank you. All those in favour? Second, Councillor Clark, and that is carried. Back to
Mayor,
you,
just
Councillor.
before we go back, is this classified as a leave, as emotional leave, because
No.
there's an amendment on this? No? Okay.
No, this is an
Thank you
amendment.
for clarifying that.
Now a substantive motion, and Councillor, not Councillor that what the original one was. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Back to you, Councillor Clark. No, Councillor Rankin was a little bit confused. It's all sorted. Over to you, Councillor Clark.
So are we starting the clock again, or where are we up to? I'm not starting at 1:05.
Right, go.
So we've heard a detailed set of circumstances that Rosa has outlined to us, Director of Planning has outlined to us, of where we're up to. We actually know where we're up to. We know that we've had the briefings, so let's not kid ourselves. We know that ESG, this is on 265, came in to see us and they wanted to undertake some dumping of fill. And officers went through them on that and they left not much information. Point
of order. Have we got 5 minutes for an amendment or is it 3?
Five.
It's 5?
Sorry about that, Perkins, Councillor Perkins.
Keep going, Councillor Clark.
We know that's the case. And so then the applicant or ESG just undertook to commence the work, making their own assumptions that they're acting legally. Similarly, that's what's happened on 130. The dumper there has made the assumptions that they're acting legally. So our dilemma in this case is to prove up that they're not and get them in front of a court to prove up that they're not. And we're going about this piece of work. Officers have to have an appropriate legal framework, so they can't say they've made up their mind. They've got to get the work. We've certainly probably made up our mind where we want to see this play out. But at the end of the day, the information will be the information. We know on 130 that the hydrology report, they adjusted to try and make it work. We're now going to have to go back and get that and see whether we can prove up that it is not correct. And in 265, once we've got the data, hopefully we're going to have enough information to be able to prove that they needed a permit, in which case I'll have to seek work and you know, that will end up going through a process of VCAT. Or indeed, if they're able to prove up they comply bizarrely with the current schedule, then we will have to look at what other legal opportunities are available to us. The other scenario that we're going to need to cover off is what happens if we determine that they needed permits and etc., and these people decide to act illegally and continue to dump the fill. So my resolution goes beyond what is the planning circumstances. It actually calls on the officers to tell us in August rather, happens regardless. No matter what are we going to do to stop this happening? And Councillor Perkins doesn't do that. He gives us as a history lesson of what's gone on and where we're up to at that point in time, but doesn't put us in a position where we're going to be able to make a decision, whatever that might be, to stop this. It's very clear. It's very concise what I'm saying. We can read red dot solutions. We can do whatever else. Red dot at the end of the day is not going to help us. It just again gives us a history lesson on what happened on some other sites and where VCAT's thinking. But again, we need to have done the work and put ourselves in that position. So I do agree that Councillor Perkins' motion has the right intent about it, and it's seeking to take us down a path. But I think it does more about trying to research what's gone on before than put us in a position to curtail the activity, which is what the Mayor and others have been, and myself have been trying to undertake to do. You know, with respect, Councillor Perkins, you've had a long time on this council to fix these issues. You haven't even fixed the one in your own ward yet. You were reminded about it. You might need to take an action similar to this to fix that one as well. But the exercise here is very clear, and that's why I'm moving in the amendment to be able to be absolutely certain about how we can stop this beyond any doubt. So I commend the amendment to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Rankin.
I'll reserve my right for the moment. Thank you.
All right. Other councillors wish to comment? Councillor Perkins.
Look, I'll talk to it. I certainly don't support the amendment. You know, it's Clark again trying to hijack the whole debate. That, you know, I let his notice of motion go through because I thought it's not doing any harm. It's certainly a different strategy to what I was undertaking in terms of trying to fully inform council, so council can actually resolve the issue in Chapel Lane on both 265 and 130. That's certainly the intent of my motion. That's the way it's read. That's the, you know, like I hadn't read Councillor Clark's notice of motion before I lodged mine. I lodged my notice of motion. He's clearly seen my notice of motion, then amended his afterwards. You know, to try to hijack the intent of mine, which was to try to refocus council's efforts on the Nillumbik planning scheme, to sort of try to say to Councillor Clark and others, we have a problem here in Nillumbik. You know, it's great for us to do advocacy to the Minister of Local Government, the Planning Minister, and try to get changes to green wedge zones across Victoria. But we've got a problem here at home, and we need to concentrate and double down on our efforts here in Nillumbik to satisfy, you know, the very, very legitimate concerns of the people living in Chapel Lane. That's the intent of my motion. That's what it seeks to do. Any report that council produces, you know, from officers, it has to include recommendations. That's the whole point of getting an officer's report. You know, why should the only source of information for community on this matter be Councillor Clark? You know, what I'm saying is we've got professional planners who are engaged and paid by the ratepayer, you know, to do a job. We're instructing them to go and prepare a report on Chapel Lane in terms of what's happened, where we are now, where do you think we need to go for in the future, what's your recommendation, give us the facts, give us the background, and I want to hear it from the officers, you know, to be honest. I don't want to hear it from Councillor Clark. Councillor Clark tries to be truthful. Councillor Brooker called him something earlier, the master of deceit or something. I don't know what it was, but anyway, it wasn't terribly complimentary, and I wouldn't go down that line. But you know, look, to be fair, I've put a motion up. Councillor Clark's motion wasn't everything that I would have hoped it to be either, but I sort of thought, well, it doesn't do any harm. I don't think this is something that we need to go to battle on. I think everybody wants to actually stop the problem in Chapel Lane, and we actually want to go beyond that and stop it happening into the future inside the Nillumbik green wedge and every other green wedge. You know, we should be able to agree on this. Councillor Clark is just playing politics. He's just trying to, you know, look at me. It's all about what I'm doing. It's all about my advocacy, you know, in trying to get rid of the state Labor government. No, Councillor Clark, it's a poor approach and it doesn't help anyone. It doesn't even help you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brooker. Can we
Yes,
just?
I didn't call Councillor Clark the master of deceit. I said I think I likened him to Harry Houdini and the master of misdirection, and I think you've seen another example of it. So that's all.
Any chance what we might?
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Demerick, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a bit like playing toys in the sandpit right at this point in time. We've got both sides here trying to ultimately achieve the same goal for the residents. Councillor Perkins brought it up just before. Let's take politics out of it. At the end of the day, 7 of us are here for the residents, and we're here to support and represent the residents. We've got some problems down in Chapel Lane. Both motions are good motions. Why can't the 7 of us agree on it? And I can't believe, Councillor Brooker, you voted against it in the last motion. They're both almost identical. And I mean, Councillor Perkins, yours is talking about council immediately request the planning minister to introduce. I mean, what, are we going to write 2 letters to the minister? Seriously? We've got a letter for Councillor Clark's asking for a letter to the minister and Councillor Perkins asking for a letter to the minister. Is there going to be 2 letters? 1 for each motion? So, come on, guys, let's get together. We're trying to get the community together. We're trying to support the community. We're ultimately all looking for the same outcome. Why would any of us vote against either of these motions? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. I've got to say, I know I'm not supposed to speak, but I'm pretty appalled. This is something that these residents are sitting at home watching this, and if I was one of them, I'd be pretty bloody disappointed, I've got to say. Can we just all get on with this, do the best we can to sort this issue without the politics, without the petty bickering, without the... Just get on with it, for God's sake. We need to have a resolution, whether it's a planning permit. Both of them have now covered off every single option of what we can do. We want it done in the quickest possible time. We want to stop it in the future. Yes, they're separate things, but seriously, we don't want to double up letters, etc. Can we just vote on this and get on with it and fix the damn problem?
So we're still on the amendment, mind you.
I know.
That was put by Councillor Clark and seconded by Councillor Rankin. Like, you know, you're only, if you wanted to support the motion, you'd vote down the amendment and get on with it.
Well, I think some of the ones you've done are superfluous, and I'm not interested in the history. I want to fix it now. We know the history. I don't want to play the blame game. I just want to get on with it and fix it. So that's why I'm voting for the amendment, so we can actually just get on with it. If any other councillors don't wish to speak, we'll put it to the motion, put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? And that's not carried. So we go back to the other original motion. And where are we up to now?
Well, we've heard from Councillor Clark.
Oh, I think we've had you, Councillor Perkins, Councillor Clark, Councillor Demerick, you haven't spoken.
Mayor, I have a procedural motion.
Councillor Demerick, I think you're the only one that hasn't spoken. Councillor Clark? And Councillor Rankin hasn't.
My question of Councillor Perkins is whether he will amend his motion to include in item 1.
Councillor Clark, that's not a procedural motion, and I can refer you to the local law, page 23. It's a meeting procedure local law 2017. It details on section 8.3, page 22 and page 23 what a procedural motion is. You are in fact out of order, and I would call the chair to direct it, get governance advice if you need to, but you're not starting down the path of a procedural motion, as is detailed in our local procedure, our meeting procedure local law. So you're out of order.
Going on, Councillor Perkins, I agree. It isn't a procedural motion.
I'll just ask a question then of Councillor Perkins, if I might, Mayor.
Through the chair, are you happy to have a question?
No, I'm not happy to have a question. I think Councillor Clark has tried to corrupt this process as so far as he possibly can. And I agree with everybody else that we've just about had enough of Councillor Clark's games. We need to get on with
Don't need
this.
to go on, Councillor Perkins. We've got two councillors who haven't spoken. Do they wish to speak? And then we'll put it to the vote.
Mayor, can I ask governance a question then?
Through the chair, governance. Yes, just one moment. We'll get Blaga on the line. She's there. Hang on, I've got to mute myself. Don't.
Are we ready?
Okay.
Can we amend the resolution further at this point?
Can we amend? Sorry. The question is whether we can amend the resolution further.
Can we amend the resolution? No, let me ask the question again. Can the mover accept, with the leave of council, some changes to the wording in motion 1?
There is no provision in the local law to allow for that because it's now moved as a motion and it's been tabled and it's been seconded and an amendment's happened and it's lost. And the only way that we can incorporate a further amendment is through another councillor seeking to table a further amendment.
So I'll ask you another question. Is it possible, therefore, either Councillor Ashton or Councillor Regan, who have not moved an amendment or seconded an amendment, to actually include as an amendment some additional words, which would be 1 through to 5 as per Councillor Perkins' resolution, but include in resolution 1 the words for council and what options are available for council to curtail this activity? Could they move that as a further amendment?
If Councillor Ashton or Councillor Egan wish to move amendment, that's for them to do so, but it's not for me to say. But they can if they wanted to.
Could I have a look at the resolution, please, again?
The motion.
Oh, sorry, the motion.
Can staff get the Councillor Perkins' motion up on the screen, please? If it's a matter of adding in some extra words to give this more teeth, I'm happy to move it myself, Councillor Ashton.
So it would be effectively the combination of the two resolutions, and it would.
Well, look, yeah, this process, you know, please, this process is just out of order. Councillor Clark's had his opportunity to move an amendment. Now he's trying to get the mayor and another councillor to move his amendment by some sleight of hand.
Councillor Perkins,
we need to continue with debate. It's out of order. Well, get some further advice. And
for the community, though.
Clearly, what Councillor Clark's trying to do is hijack the meeting.
No,
if this gives the motion more teeth, I'm happy to move it.
Who's pulling the strings on these puppets?
Oh, that's appalling.
Yeah, it is appalling.
It's appalling that you go around and say, I want to shop around my thing. Can
you don't want to stop it?
And can you do it? And can you do it?
I'm just asking the questions to try to get the best outcome for the community, Councillor.
Councillor Ashton, do you want to move it or do you want me to?
No, well, I don't know where it is and where it sits, and that's why I asked the question. I want to see.
If Councillor wish to move
it's
it.
just giving more teeth to the
no.
Can you put it up?
Councillor Ashton voted against the Councillor Perkin resolution. So
I voted against Councillor Clark.
Councillor Clark's resolution. So I don't see how she can be putting up the same thing essentially now. It's nonsense.
No, that's what I want to see.
Councillors, it isn't the same thing. It's completely different. It's a combination of the two.
Correct.
Look, I'm over this. Let's just stick with
So am I.
Councillor Perkins' original amendment. Thank you. Original motion. Thank you.
All right.
Move on.
I think whether the words are there or not, to be honest, we're going to make sure that staff are going to do this. So we just need to vote with this and get on with it and get some action happening for these people.
Councillor Ashton felt bullied by the other councillors, but I take the point.
Yeah. So we'll go to the vote unless Councillor Rankin and Councillor Jemerick want to add anything, and all those in favour?
can I get a right of reply?
Yeah, sure.
You know, like, you know, we listened to Clark for 10 minutes because he talks against the motion and then he puts up an amendment. And then he tries to corrupt the process by getting other councillors to put up
another. What your right of reply is, please,
another amendment.
Can you be quiet as well?
Well, I'm not going to be called corrupt.
Come on.
I didn't call you corrupt. I said you tried to corrupt the process.
Councillor Perkins, would you get on with your right of reply?
A bird, a corruptor. Look, you know, people wanted to get on with it. You know, we heard that from the mayor. We heard that from the second Councillor Rankin.
I thought we weren't going to go into politics.
Their actions have done exactly the opposite in terms of trying to drag this out for as long as they possibly can in support of Councillor Clark. Look, I still don't understand what his issues were with the motion. The whole sort of business around trying to explain to officers what a report is about. Of course, a report has suggested actions and recommendation. I haven't seen an officer report come to a council meeting in my 10 years on council that hasn't had an officer recommendation. That's the whole point of it. When you call for a report, Councillor Clark, it's the whole purpose. You know, get some professional advice from the bureaucracy, you know, on how we should proceed. And that's all the motion seeks to do. It seeks to look for the background, to research some VCAT decisions, you know, and make considered recommendations to council on a way forward. The other very important thing is about transparency and openness in governance. It's about you know, bringing the community up to speed, who are just as annoyed, if not much more annoyed, the longer this goes on, and the sort of deflections and the sort of work that Councillor Clark's trying to achieve, and trying to say, look over there. There's nothing to be concerned about here. There's nothing that we can do because somebody's already resolved that a permit's not required. Now, that's not the position that we've found out now in the last few days. You know, we've actually got a little bit more information in the last week from council officers, but certainly the public haven't. You know, the 30 or 40 people that are sitting up late tonight might have heard Rosa, you know, answer some pointed questions from Councillor Rankin, so they'll be a little bit more informed. But you know, this is a matter of public interest. You know, this it has to be a report, and everybody needs to know what's the potential way forward, and then they can see the resolution that council will ultimately come down on. So, yeah, Councillor Clark, poor show, sir.
Councillor Perkins. Can we vote on the item, please? All those in favour? All those against? And that is carried unanimously.
Division? Unanimous, was it? Don't need to call division. We got unanimous.
Councillor Perkins, would you please be quiet?
Just thinking out loud.
We have no delegates' reports or supplementary or urgent business, but we do have some confidential reports. Can I have a mover to go into confidential, please? Councillor Rankin. All those in favour, and a seconder, please. Second, Councillor Ashton. All those in favour? And that is carried.
Can I just make a personal explanation?
No, Councillor Perkins. Not
it's for in the local law. I've been accused of bullying Councillor Ashton.
Everybody's done their fair share tonight.
I've
had enough of it, and we're going into confidential.
I'd just like to make it clear. I haven't bullied anybody.